Hey, we are live, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, tech fans of all shapes and sorts and sizes and persuasions. I'm excited. You're excited. TK's excited.
Yeah,
Yeah, he is.
I'm
Look at that.
excited. Yeah, we are here, man. We are pumped.
We're gonna do this. I love coming into a live stream and already seeing so many familiar faces, so many friends. I just thank you so much for spending some time with us on a Tuesday night.
On a Tuesday
Um,
night.
it's been kind of
What
a whirlwind season, hasn't it, TK? Just a bunch of
it
phones
it's
coming
been
out, and we're all
crazy.
scrambling.
It's Techtober times 3 times 4. The phones keep coming and I
The hits
this
just
was a
keep on
surprise.
coming.
This was a surprise. I didn't think this was going to happen. Like they went quiet. So they're
So,
like
so was your experience like mine? I mean, I was trying to talk about this on the podcast where it was like Friday night, I get a cryptic email from Sony PR. Saturday, the phone is showing up on my doorstep, and Sunday is some kind of embargo that no one else seemed to be in on.
it was very weird, right? I mean, I was like Sunday afternoon, 5:30, 5, whatever. So like I was very confused on the timing. Very much a out of left field. Like so we obviously all heard about the initial announcement back in February. There was a lot of videos put out and a whole bunch of people talked about it, and it was silence. It was like serious, like silence for months. And then early in the week, I get an email through my XDA contacts, I guess, and then they were like, "Hey, back in we're looking at devices. We're thinking maybe we can get one for you. Would you be interested?" But then at the same time, they're like, "And then the embargo's on Sunday," and I'm like, "On Sunday?" He's like, "Yeah, Sunday afternoon," and it was kind of like. Yeah, yeah, get me on that list. Whatever you need to do, ship that phone now, send it over.
It
Um,
was the kind of because I'm smack dab in the middle of doing my sort of longer term wrap up on the OnePlus 8. I'm still cutting
I
a
was in the
video for the TCL. You got
exactly.
your TCL 10 video out, right?
I
That's
did the
live
10
on
to
your channel.
10L. I did the I pushed out the review last week, but I think what I'm working on mostly because I also did a 10L Amazon live stream, and then this week I'm going to do the 10
That's
Pro
right.
live stream. So I'm trying to touch. So with many of the devices that we're getting, since there's so many, I was actually in the middle of working on the Mi 10 versus OnePlus 8 because I felt like those are two good comparable ones.
For sure.
Love the Midnight Podcast. You know, why not?
Good
Because that's
times.
how we do it.
Well, and also, I mean, let's be real here. West Coast represent because it's only 9 o'clock. We could go all night long.
That's exactly what it is. We will make sure that you go all night. By the time we go to sleep, you're waking up.
Boom.
It's
We're
one of
not going to
those.
do that. I mean, we usually tap out at around 2 hours, so we're not going to go that long.
See, this is what happens, Juan. You say that, and
Famous
then
last words.
and then we strive to beat that. But yeah, no,
Oh,
I know.
and Gary the fireman already kicking off with a super chat. This is worth staying up late for. Gary, thank you so much. Much
Hey
appreciated.
man, welcome back, man. Welcome
Definitely
back, everybody. I
digging.
see everybody. Kyle's in there. Oh man.
Oh, there's Easy Computer Solutions. I mean, I've got my buddy LFA Reviews. LFA, I just got some blonde BL05s, some fun earbuds, and one of the things that's going to be really fun to talk about when we're looking at a super premium Sony device is that I can actually plug earbuds into this super premium phone. So
What
that's
is that?
definitely
What
something
is
to
that port
talk about.
called? I haven't seen that one on many devices.
It's called it's the courage port because you have
Oh,
to be courageous in this day and age to include a port that is universally accessible, doesn't require any funky licensing fees, and
has
is
zero latency in
offers
gaming. Yeah, no.
zero the latency for gaming and still offers the absolute top tier of audio connectivity and quality. Because some people love their ears and some people don't.
Some people don't. That's how it goes, man.
We don't. We judge them and we judge them harshly, but it's okay if you don't love your ears. That's totally fine. I totally get it.
That's how we do it, man.
That's
Sorry,
how we
as you
do
were
it.
talking to me before, I was doing another test.
I mean,
I told you today.
I mean,
Today was a benchmark test. I'm running numbers on everything, so like
tell me
seriously,
we're
all
not
day long.
just totally scrambling on trying to get some of this stuff. I didn't mean to like totally sidetrack us on all of the other phones and work that we need to do, but it there's almost kind of before we really get into talking about the Xperia, sorry, everyone joining us today, we're talking about an Xperia today. That's what you joined this live stream for, not to hear TK and I whinge on about our workload.
That's usually how it goes.
But because of the sort of the delays and the altered timetables and some of the unknowns, it's just been it's been tough keeping track of this industry this year. This is going to be a funky year for phones. I feel like there's almost like there's like additional pressure to try and crank, to try and make sure we're still doing our due diligence, that we're still trying to chart phones and track phones and review the ways that we normally do. But I don't know about you, TK. I mean, I just feel like, man, I'm under the gun. This phone's already late. It's nothing on me. That's Sony's distribution problem. But like, if I'm going to make any kind of noise about this on YouTube or make any kind of video on this that people are going to want to watch, it's got to be out yesterday.
Exactly. Yeah. And I feel like it was, it was a pleasant surprise, but it kind of jumped in the middle of a whole bunch of other things for me too. So for me, definitely, an entire schedule change on everything, but I'm happy that it's here, even with the short amount of time that I have it with me. So I'm good. I'm happy. Got a chance to test it out over the weekend, and I have about another week with it, so it should be good.
Yeah, and again, I'm like, I think I might be in the same boat. These are loaner review units. Did yours come in retail? Because mine came in a brown cardboard box.
No, I think mine is the way it was. So I asked, it's not supposed to be retail. I think it's early released European model. Okay. So what I have is the European model, because actually the box, which, just as a disclaimer, it does not work as 5G. My box actually says that on the box. So my understanding, I think, is at least there's a good possibility that the European style may have 5G enabled in that market, but in the US, it's only 4G LTE. Gotcha. So it depends on the carrier.
A couple quick super chats. Easy Computer Solutions just saying hello, all. Hello. I love seeing your beautiful face in this live chat. We've got LFA Reviews. Make sure to support the production of top-notch content, especially when that top-notch content is on a phone that does not have a notch. See what I did there? See? I made it topical. And then Nick Burklow, the return of real audio performance reviews. I actually just put out the audio deep dive on Patreon just before going live with this live stream. So I'm trying something a little different. It's a bit more of a casual conversational audio review, but I still have, speaker comparisons and the charts and the graphs, just a little less editing and a little less B-roll to put it all together. But we're going to be talking about some of that here today too. So that I mean, there's a phone here sitting on my desk with a headphone jack and stereo speakers, and we've got to talk about what's one of the most important aspects of a $1,200 phone. And then wrapping this up, V Gorilla, how do you like the Xperia 2 overall versus the V60 and S20 Ultra? And so I'd actually like to kick off that conversation. We are in mad comparison territory, and I think the V60 is an obvious comparison point against the Xperia 1. There's so much overlap with all of those. But before we get into that, because I'll be the LG shill, sure, I'd actually really like to hear, you got to spend so much more time with Galaxies this year than I have. I'd actually like to hear some of your thoughts on Samsung's philosophy this year. No, exactly. Samsung had a very specific philosophy this year with the S20s. Sony is iterating on a massive change in their smartphone designs from the Xperia 1 to the 1 Mark II. How do you feel these companies are executing at this $1,000 to $1,200 tier right now? And what would you say might be some of the consumer overlap between an Xperia, a potential Xperia customer, and a Galaxy customer?
I think the way, so for the most part, I think if we're looking at them as a price point, right? I mean, I think the LG, if we look at it, is the cheapest of the three devices. If we look at the
It's
Ultra, the
the
60, and
budget
the
option.
it's the budget option, man. It's the budget option with wireless charging, a massive battery, and a quad DAC, and of course, basically just the best experience you can get when it comes to content consumption. I think the way Galaxy's approached it this year is very experimental. Galaxy started off right out of the box. They wanted to be the above 1,000 price point, and at the beginning, the S20 started at $999. I mean, they saw the light, and now it's $799. But I feel like the S20 Plus and the S20 Ultra are obviously their flagships. The S20 was kind of a little bit crippled in the sense that it didn't have a millimeter wave on it. Um, so Samsung is trying to approach it in a sense of they wanted to experiment with the Ultra, so they gave us that large sensor, the telescope, the periscope zoom option, and all that stuff in there. But at the end of the day, really is a very, I would say, minimal upgrade from what we got last year. I mean, other than the fact that we have the X55 modem with the 865, the reality there. You're really looking at a slightly upgraded version of the S10 Plus with that experimental camera. And we all know exactly what's going on with the camera. They went with a large sensor. The whole seeking issue with the focusing problem is still there. It hasn't been fixed on the S20 Ultra. And one of the main reasons why I generally don't like using that one as my main, for still photography, I still don't prefer to using that. Video-wise, it's not bad. I feel like it's a good place to be, but I don't think you need the S20 Ultra to get that video. S20 Plus or even the S20 can give you pretty much the same experience. And then, of course, we got the whole refresh rate upgrade, which everybody wanted to get. But then it's still kind of through a caveat. You can either have high, in a QHD resolution or 120 hertz. So I feel like Samsung's game this year is a game of different experiments, and not only that, not giving you everything you want, but giving you things in different configurations. So they need a little bit more work, and I think software needs to be upgraded. And hopefully, in the next iteration, we'll see it better. I feel like the main reason I'm still using my S20 Ultra is because of most of my personal accounts, and I always try to explain. A lot of people like, how come I'm not using, like a OnePlus 8. The OnePlus 8 Pro is my main driver.
It's because you're this terrible Samsung shill. It's just
it's that, and it's also because I think for me at least, I've configured all of my accounts that I generally don't like transferring from one phone to another. And for me, that's the device I like to keep. I'm going to keep it on. I own this device. I bought this with my own money, so it's not a device that I have to worry about. Maybe at some point or another, some PR company will call me back, say, "Hey, can we have the phone back?" Because an example would be, I thought I was going to have the Red Magic 5G for a while. This goes back next week,
and it's going back.
And this goes back next week. So
it's really difficult to express how precious that is. How often we need to just check in and like settle down. It's really easy for a reviewer's perspective to get warped when your SIM card is in and out of different devices, and you don't get that chance to live with
especially the last few months with the whole situation that's going on, with the amount of phones that have been coming out, it's very hard for me. Like, I get the question all the time, what's your daily driver? I'm like, okay, main phone is the S20 Ultra. And then today it's this. And if you ask me in the afternoon, it could be this. It changes every day. So it's hard. Yeah. So that's why I generally keep one device that has the core apps that I need to keep to maintain my life as a person, and then the rest of the devices are generally just literally on a carousel, kind of a spinning process. And
except for this new Sony, it's going to be the phone that's going to unseat everything, and
it will be as soon as I put in my pre-order on Monday, because I will be with everybody on Monday morning on the 1st of June. And I will be pre-ordering my unit because, as you probably, as Juan and I were talking about earlier, is this is not a rental. This is a loaner for me. At the end of the day, I got to spend some time with an amazing device, and hopefully, as everybody else, if they're intrigued enough and they enjoyed the content that we're putting out, and they do decide to pick up one for themselves, they will also be able to enjoy it, and I will be joining them because you get a free pair of headphones with it, of course.
Well, yeah, I mean they're totally free. It's a free pair of headphones. We've got Tana So Lit dropping a super chat. What's up, Juan? Good to see you, my friend. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I really wish I could put that spin on it. I've been practicing my yes, sirs, but I don't think I'm quite there yet. And Everyday Tech, keep grinding, Juan. I'm trying to catch you. you're gonna be there, man. You're gonna meet up with me. We're all good. This is a beautiful tech community, and we're all playing
It
this
is.
game. This is so much fun. So I kind of feel like your explanation there, with prices climbing higher and higher, it feels like Samsung was stuck in being being the first place
Mhm.
phone.
They are. They
They're
always. I
well, but I
think.
mean, I guess I said that clumsily. It's their position to launch the year. The Galaxy S is regarded as like the first real tentpole launch. They're the first one out of the gate. And I don't know about you. I get a number of comments on my channel from people that like to sort of disparage. Well, why would you buy another phone when Samsung got there first? Like, I don't really feel like that's the race. That's how you win the race. It's just they were
No.
available
Yeah.
before anyone else.
It's an exclusivity deal. I don't know how they've been able to work it out with Qualcomm, but for some reason within the last few years, the S line, Samsung, always get the first launch of any Snapdragon new SoC, the 865, the 855, and I think the 845 was also in the same boat.
Mm-hmm.
So the general essentially is obviously if you are a fan of the ecosystem, if you're a fan of a certain style of a UI on Android, and that's the best way to explain it, because you're not really getting Android. You're getting Samsung's take on Android, the same way we get different versions like Color OS or Oscar's OS. I feel like at the end of the day, there's going to be, obviously some people are going to be chill with Samsung and obviously with Oppo or even with OnePlus, because the OnePlus community is also very strong. They're pretty much very much in the same boat. I mean, they will swear by OnePlus. And I'm personally a big fan of Android. That's generally how I approach it. If Samsung is the first one to release a device that comes with the 865, that's a great device. I generally will cover it. I get them anyways as I purchase them. I don't get them as devices. But at the end of the day, I think it's more for me to see what are the new things coming up. And I don't really buy into the Samsung makes the best experience, because there is no such thing as the best. Everybody compromises, everybody tailors, everybody does little things here and there that, then you'll find somebody that stands up and says, well, they didn't do this and they didn't do that. But what I wanted to kind of circle back with the whole Samsung, LG versus Sony. What I saw this year, though, with Sony and with LG is a return to listening to what the consumers wanted. It's the understanding what the people that are actually paying money, be it $7.99, be it $8.99. When I was at that pre-briefing for the LG, I seriously felt like they were talking to me, not as a reporter or as a person that's going to go out and do videos, but as a consumer. I actually am a big fan of LG's hardware, and I've been a big fan of theirs for a long, long time. My only gripe, if there's ever been in anything, is the fact that I wanted support post-purchase, meaning more updates, more features that they say they're going to release, right? But I've come to accept that. But again, in that meeting, when they said we're gonna put in a 5,000 milliamp battery, I'm like, wow, we're going to put in a second display as a case that you can pick up right away. And they were talking about the future. I'm like, wow, wireless charging, wow, quad DAC still there, no regional change. I'm like, wow. The whole time, literally, I mean, my mouth was open. I was very excited. And it's something that I appreciated once I was able to play with the device. I mean, we had a little bit of time there, but then about, a few weeks later, we got our hands on, and I'm still very happy with it. The V60 does not leave my desk. This is something that I always turn on. It is by far a standard for me when it comes to audio, a standard for me when it comes down to enjoying content. It's not a QHD display, but it's a beautiful 1080p large display with a massive battery that lasts forever.
I'm glad that you kind of kicked this off this way, because I'm having the same feeling with Sony.
Yeah,
only
exactly.
I'm a little worried about Sony listening to some of their most fervent fans at a time of increasingly aggressive component pricing. Because I mean, how many times have we had those OnePlus conversations? Well, what OnePlus needs is water resistance, rated water resistance, and wireless charging, and they need to have a better camera sensor, and they need to do this, and they need to do that, and put in a bigger battery, and still only be half the price of a Samsung on sale. when in any other year, a no compromises phone already would have been a premium top price tag kind of device. I have some concerns about a $1,200 price tag if it's from Samsung, if it's from Apple, if it's from Sony, because I think this is something you've been sharing with in your content too. I'm getting a little frustrated with the overall conversation about premium tier devices over $1,000 price tags, Galaxy S20 Plus, iPhone 11 Pro Max. The Sony is going to be in a rarefied category of top tier crown jewel devices. But that to me means we're going to have to be even more selective and more nuanced about who is the right fit for a phone like this. And it's very frustrating to me when I see reviews of a Galaxy S20 Plus or a Galaxy Ultra, and you hear a lot of pontificating on the average consumer using kind of a phone. And there is no one, I just don't believe there's an average consumer philosophically. But two, if I'm saying, average being price.
He has an account on Twitter. I see him all the time. He's your average.
The average. Yes, of course. Yeah. But again, it's if I'm really, I don't know, it's such a corny joke, but I was there. I was with you for it. But if I'm looking at what's going to satisfy, I have no issues recommending an iPhone SE, an iPhone 11, a Pixel 3a, a Galaxy A series, this new TCL. There are plenty of daily driver Toyota Corollas for people to own. I'm going to be very, very sensitive to the conversation around the Sony for people just sort of, I kind of picked it up and I did some Instagrams and then I took 3 photos in the auto HDR mode. And it's okay. That's not what this phone is about. This phone is a 2001 A Space Odyssey monolith of content creator tools. That's a totally different conversation.
I really very much feel like the Xperia 1 Mark II for me feels very much like a content creator, a video producer's tool. It really, the amount of thought process that they put into Cinema Pro and obviously with photography with Camera Pro, it has basically just taken it so much further than what the Xperia, the original, the Xperia 1 did last year. Obviously, the display is still gorgeous. There is no question. Obviously, we're still looking at the same gorgeous panel, but it is very much a producer.
Let's touch on that real briefly. We've had a couple questions. You've been playing with the Galaxies. You've got 1080p.
I even have the Xperia 1. Yeah.
We've got the Xperia 1 that we can take a look back at with and it is a UHD resolution display, but it's UHD in cinema wide. So it's 3840 dots vertically, but it is 21:9. So what is that? 3840 by 1644, something like that. So it is a UHD crop if we're going to be specific, not necessarily a 4K display. But
no, and it's not 4K all the time too, so it doesn't actually run at that resolution. Otherwise, your battery would be like you,
especially on a Sony battery. We're gonna have to talk about that a little bit too. But we've been playing with Samsung's, faster refresh rates or higher resolution. Playing with OnePlus's,
which I don't understand
faster refresh rates and higher resolutions. What have you found? What have your experience has been checking out this new Sony Motion sort of software tweak, where it's kind of an interpolation to make the screen feel like it's more
faster? But that's exactly what it is. It just makes it's basically like speeding up animations. I feel like it's speeding up the animations and smoothing them out so that it looks like it's running at 90 hertz, but it's still running at 60 hertz. I think I've never had a problem, even with the Xperia 1, with the UI and the speed that the display runs. Both the Xperia 1 and the 1 Mark II offer smooth graphics. I think the animation's always been minimalistic, especially within the last couple of years, like last year and this year's Sony's. I feel like they've done a good job in the UI. I haven't really Like I compared it straight head to head with the 7T that I have. It doesn't really stack up. It's not. I still feel like when I'm looking at them next, one next to the other, that a true 90 hertz display will really truly feel much faster, like in the refresh and then the emotion. Where I feel like Sony, it definitely looks good and it's better than, just as if, it's better than just saying it's 60. It's a very smooth 60, consistent animation. It's basically consistent across the UI, all the applications. It reminded me a lot of how LG did it on their system, where they basically said, let's give you a consistent 60 FPS across everything so that you feel like the device is faster, as opposed to having to drop between 30 and 60 every time you jump between different applications. So for me, I look at it as it's smooth, it's nice, it's clean. I don't think it's a big selling point for me as far as a feature being to say, it feels like a 90 hertz. I would say just if you want a smooth experience and you want it to be consistent and it feels fast, the UI on both the Xperia 1 and the Mach 2 both feel very nice. I think it's more, for me, better when I started looking into the white balance modes that they added, the little more control that we have now under the white balance section that we didn't have last year with the Xperia 1, where they got me there with especially, with just overall, like those little things in the background, things that people don't even look at, jumping into the white balancing option. Yeah, no, exactly.
Let's see if we can show off some display stuff here. Again, above where we were with the Xperia 1. So first off, the quality settings at the top, this image quality and white balance. So first off, this is the image quality modes are kind of fantastic. So this is
standard
where you're
is what you get out of the box. Yeah.
This motion blur. The standard mode is what you got, the creator mode. So then you're like, okay, well this changes up the color gamut. Developed image processing compatible with BT 2020 color gamut and 10-bit color of HDR specification. And then you come into white balance and wow.
So so exactly.
To dial in specifically the color tone off of this display. This is already, I think this is a sneak peek of what's going to make the Xperia Pro so compelling for people that are really doing broadcast work.
And I feel like that's what that one is intended for. I think the Xperia Pro, it really wasn't meant for the average. It's really meant for broadcast. It's really meant
for
to be
the
more
average consumer.
The average consumer that needs HDMI in on a device, not HDMI out. It's in on a smartphone. That's the average consumer. That's the Xperia Pro for the average consumer. Yeah, with millimeter wave tech on it. So probably Verizon, as you probably think of that.
I'm really hoping that we see. So this is the big unknown. We've been talking about whether or not this phone is going to end up being a 4K device in the United States. It doesn't. The message hasn't really seemed to kind of break through the gadget community. The same thing that's happening with OnePluses and price increases and LG. There's no unlocked version of the V60. It really seems to me like 5G.
Yet. I'm surprised about that part. I felt maybe by now.
I'm really not. I mean, LG is in a cost-cutting year, and I really feel they're really only going after regions and markets where they can have carrier relationships. Anything outside of that seems to be a no-go. And I think it's because 5G is making all of these companies remake the phone 4 times over for the United States. There's a reason why the OnePlus is cheaper in India, because there's only going to be one flavor of that phone. Here in the United States, you've got the OnePlus 8 and 8 Pro, and they're unlocked. And then that's kind of in the same ballpark as the T-Mobile flavor. And then if you want to play ball with Verizon, well, if you want millimeter wave, you need the OnePlus 8 UW. And that's a different phone that doesn't even share case specifications.
No, I was surprised. Cases. Yeah, why would they do that little minute change just on the case? It's like...
And I worry, we look at someone like Sony, they have been so reticent to have any kind of carrier relationship since, was it like the Z2? Was that maybe the last one?
On T-Mobile.
So and someone please correct me. I might be wrong there because of my Sony history. He's like, no, I've got it right over my shoulder.
It was
but
my first Sony. It was my first. I was very happy at the time because I felt very privileged at the time that finally Sony made it to T-Mobile and I was able to get it on a payment plan, because Sony phones have historically been just too expensive, right? So it had water resistant stereo speakers, all the things I really wanted out of a Sony, and it was on T-Mobile. So yeah, but yeah, I think that was the last time even that we saw a Sony officially on T-Mobile. I think that they
and
released.
we've got Dave and DCJ. Z3 might have been the last one that had a proper carrier launch. So,
Okay.
and again, getting back to OnePlus, we're jumping through all these hoops. You go get your unlocked OnePlus 8. It's pretty much only going to work with T-Mobile. It's probably not even going to be compatible with AT&T's network when they stop lying to people about 5GE. This is a mess. And so because you have to make 4 different variations of the phone to cover all the carriers and an unlocked variant, that's going to jack up prices. I will be very surprised if Sony is able to walk into this market again with a millimeter wave phone. It really doesn't seem to me like Verizon's going to want to play ball with that, and that Sony doesn't have any direct relationship with carriers to that same degree. I'm very anxious. I'm very anxious to see if any of the 5G bands on the One Mark II are going to be properly supported, and will we really get the Pro here in North America?
So from what I understand, at least from what I've, at least the impression I got, at least from talking to different people over time, is I feel like I don't think this version of the device will support for 5G in the US. I don't think they're trying to focus on 5G. I think their approach is mostly, which is a little bit of a sad thing for me, because I felt like the hardware is there. It's not that the hardware is not there. The 865 has the modem built into it. I mean, so it's intentionally disabled. My hope is that it maybe at some point maybe something changes and they're able to enable it, even if it just supports sub-6. If anything else, not even millimeter wave, because I don't think it's built with millimeter wave tech. At least not on the Mach 1, sorry, the Mach 2. But the Pro, at least from the videos that we saw, with the fact that they're banking on the high-speed transfer rate, that makes me believe truly that is going to be a Verizon exclusive. And with the way Verizon's been building up their network, I think they're going to be probably the one driving that force. It's going to be kind of like knowing that Moto is basically, Verizon. Like, it's just like you hear a Moto phone being released, you're like, okay, when does it come out on Verizon?
I mean, is that valuable to Verizon to have sort of a collection of phones that no one else can really have on their networks, even though we're pretty confident that most consumers are going to buy Apple and Samsung?
I feel like it's more of the building up the roster of exclusivity over the years. I mean, it just, I really wish I knew any information on the way PR is on the Verizon side, but they have a strong enough relationship. They're one of the strongest ones in the US. And if you do want millimeter wave right now, I mean, even though T-Mobile and AT&T have millimeter wave in very small areas and depending where you can find it, they're not even advertising it, right? T-Mobile's pretty much focusing on just all the new bands that they purchased or they acquired as part of Sprint merger. So it's a very different
out from under the rug, like yoink.
It was a thing long time coming. So I feel like so the short answer is I think Verizon has the power to be able to command that. And I feel like if you're looking for that relationship, that's why OnePlus had to create its whole separate one. I mean, even Samsung had to create a whole new S20 for it to work.
Isn't there a UW version? Yeah.
Yeah, because out of the box, originally, remember, even at the launch event, the 20 did not have millimeter wave. Only the 20 Plus and the Ultra had millimeter wave support, which drove people that if they were on Verizon and they wanted to buy it unlocked, they had to go with the Plus or the Ultra, which drove you into the $1,200 to $1,400 anyways, right? So now they come back a few months later and now they're releasing an S20 UW. So short answer is I feel like Verizon is still in that land of exclusivity, and I feel like if you're Motorola, if you love Motorola and you've been a big fan of theirs for a long time, you're probably already on Verizon and you're probably just going to get it with them anyways, because it just to get it unlocked, to import an unlocked model of the Edge Plus right now.
I mean, at this point, from the original Droid to today.
Absolutely, yeah, it's been theirs since then. And
But
it's okay.
we've
For me, it's a good thing. Let them
we've
do
got
their thing and let us enjoy other stuff. Sorry.
a couple other comments here real quick that I want to jump in on. Josh Vergara, hey, thank you for joining, hanging out in the live chat. It's pronounced Xperia 1II.
Yes, actually, I've been corrected a few times. Aye, aye, Captain.
Yes, I one. It's the Xperia Juan I. So that's pretty cool, right? It's
Okay,
the
Huang, aye, aye.
Juan phone
Aye,
you might
aye.
enjoy hearing me talk about. I'm still trying to make Mark II a thing. It's not gonna be, but I love talking about an Xperia like it's Iron Man armor. Then we've
It
got
is. I want to say
Michael.
Mark II all the time, but
I
I
want to say
think
Mark II. It's
most people
the
call it
Mark
Xperia
II.
1 II. Yeah, Xperia 1 Mark II.
Boom.
Xperia 1 2.
Quick question here from Michael. I haven't had a chance to test this yet. I really don't know. Do you know if the Xperia 1 II wireless charging is fast wireless charge enabled, or is it just a standard 5 watt? My opinion, until I can get a chance to really try and break out all of my different wireless chargers to see, is Sony's. This is only their first generation wireless charger. I don't think they're going to try and nuke this battery with a fast charger.
They don't.
They have
They're
been ahead of the curve on battery saving
Mhm.
technologies. I think they're going to do everything they can to rein in heat. I would only count on this being a slow to medium speed charger at best.
It is, and there is a setting in there that it turns on overnight when you're charging it later in the evening, where it actually
Mhm.
tells you that it's going to turn on slow charging, and it gives me a target time of when I can actually expect my phone to fully be charged. And it turned it on like about a couple of hours ago, and it said that I put my phone and it was like around 45%, and it said by 5 a.m. tomorrow morning it will reach
Mhm.
100%. So they're very much considering battery life, heat,
Battery
because the
longevity,
device
yeah.
doesn't really have a lot of gaming centric, vapor chamber, configuration. It's intended to basically, yeah. So it's not really built as a gaming phone. Let's put it that way. But it does have a lot of good gaming capabilities.
And LeBaron Burton, I probably already missed you wrapping us up with wrapping up his stint in the live stream. Got to hit the hay. Been loving the Sony content. Keep it coming. Thank you so much for the super chat. Much appreciated. And he's probably already gone, but LB runs an amazing popcorn store. What was it? DoTheWorldOfFlavor.com. I can personally vouch for some ridiculous and amazingly created blends of popcorn flavors. So definitely go check them out. We plowed through a giant bucket of dill pickle flavored popcorn, and it was
Oh,
amazing.
okay.
So
Dill pickle. Okay, I love dill pickles. I just never thought of them that with as a popcorn
I cannot
flavoring.
figure it out. I mean, he's got like there's like a baked potato and bacon, and it tastes exactly like baked potato and bacon. There's a key lime pie where you can actually like kind of taste the crust and like the sweet key lime flavoring. Like it's voodoo. It is legit voodoo. What he's
Okay.
doing to
Yeah, I
create.
saw I saw something about that on El Jefe's feed over a couple of days ago on Twitter, and I was like, man, there's so many bags of popcorn.
It's hilarious.
It's a
And
lot of popcorn.
Mark Eric Lane, one more super chat here, real quick. The Sony Xperia Juan II, the phone for Pirate Captain Bagnell. They'll be making you walk the plank now.
Hashtag some
Sunny,
pirate guy, aye, Captain.
Sunny Jim. I can't really do a good pirate voice with these Invisalign trays in. Let's get back to the Xperia and not me making bad puns about a phone name and then also getting really snacky. I could totally go for another bucket of popcorn right now.
Yes. I feel like we should have had those things sitting on the ready right before the live stream, and just
right, and just you could hear all of the ASMR chewing of me just shoveling popcorn through my open maw
but definitely,
of an orifice. So we're 2 days in.
yeah.
I think
Yeah.
both of us are having very positive experiences, positive impressions of what the Sony has to offer. There's been a number of people commenting on things like the selfie camera.
Yeah.
This is going to be a very difficult challenge for Sony, and I'm putting Sony in the same bucket that I would put LG in, where I feel, especially in North America, less so in Japan, and just like for LG, less so in South Korea. The home team kind of understands Sony's gig better, but here in North America, they do not have the advertising or marketing presence to kind of make this aesthetic understood. Um, a phone like an iPhone is a great walk and talk vlogging phone, has a great selfie camera, that 4K 60 frames per second. The LG V60, 4K 60 frames per second on the selfie camera. I don't know how to properly express that Sony engineers know better than you do as the consumer. Has always been the aesthetic of using a Sony phone. They are not looking at any kind of sort of YouTubery kind of use for this phone. This to me does not feel like a YouTuber kind of camera.
No, I think it will strike you very hard the moment you pick up the device. I mean, if you just looked at the specs, even it's an 8 megapixel front-facing camera. You could definitely see where they decided to spend the time. They focused literally like 95% of their effort onto the triple camera setup with the new time of flight sensor that we have in the back, as opposed to basically, and gave you face detection, autofocusing, and of course, continuous AF. I mean, the improvements that we have on the back sensors this year is just crazy. Ludicrous crazy, just leap years into what we want cameras to do. And of course, the ability to control all of that. I think the front-facing camera is decent at best. I was able to take a few good pictures with it. Exposure wasn't the best. I mean, I would never be able to consider saying this is going to make a great vlogging camera. No, this is a content creation powerhouse. And so, yeah, what you can see right there with Cinema Pro, you have control level, and they even focused it in there. You don't get 4K 60 on the standard camera application on this on the Xperia 1 Mark II.
Nope.
You only get 4K 60 in Cinema Pro. So you see that sitting right there on the top right, where Juan already started this project with this. So you see 4K 60 there. You see the different looks option, the frames, the ISO level. Yeah, you can change the different levels in there exactly, and it screams control down to the level of what you want to do with it. And if you're not looking for that type of equipment or that type of granular control on your camera, on your system, then I don't think this is going to appeal to you. And I wouldn't buy it just because it has a 4K display, because at the end of the day, when you're looking at it, that's just one component of the story that Sony has. It's just that they say, look, you want to be able to enjoy the content that you're watching, truly record 4K and watch 4K, you could do it. Yeah, so you're there, you're setting your presets, your A and B right there, and then jumping between the two. Exactly. So those are things that you can't do with a normal smartphone, and it's just native in there. And,
so
and I love the fact, yeah.
You look at something like this. This is the Cinema Pro app, and you can totally see all of the influence from the Sony Alpha team. Their standalone DSLR and mirrorless cameras, and I can totally see a Sony engineer saying, "Well, we don't put selfie cameras on the A7 because that would be garbage. So we're not even going to support the selfie camera in our camera app for the Xperia." That's
neither the
not
Camera Pro
happen.
or the Cinema Pro offer it. Yeah.
So I mean, I'd show you here. Let me show you guys what happens when I do Photo Pro, because it's technically locked to portrait, and I can't rotate it. But this is the Photo
Come on,
Pro
Juan,
app.
just move the house.
That just like, so hold on. If I can bring TK back for this. But you can't really see what's happening here, but I absolutely love. So I've got the high speed on, and let me just do. So you've got like there's no on-screen shutter button.
I love the fact that it even works on my cat, man. I've never been able to find a good smartphone that actually does eye autofocusing on the cat. Like the ability of actually keep focus on a moving cat that never sits still. That was driving me crazy. That was cool.
But they've even I really, the philosophy of this is that they want this to be as similar to a Sony Alpha experience as you can get. There is no on-screen shutter button, so I'm using the dedicated hardware shutter button, and it just looks incredible when you just start flicking bursts of photos. Like I'm just shooting 20. So we're up to 100. 130, 150, 170, 190, 200 shots. So there you go. That's insane.
That's how you do it, though. But that's the thing about that. Now we get the tiger,
Sorry,
and then now we can see ourselves.
The crotch shot here, but I'll just I've got to switch this back over to my other feed. 2 seconds. Yeah,
No.
I completely understand why someone is gonna hear the phrase creator phone. This is a phone for creators, and then you're gonna think of one kind of creation. And I think LG absolutely nails the pick up and go, walk and talk vlogging, and you can do some more cinema stuff with this.
Yeah.
Sony engineers, Sony software design. This is how can we make our phones as similar to an alpha, and that goes for all of the good and bad. So if you were really hyped up about having some great kind of selfie camera, Sony engineers are going to tell you you're wrong, that you should use the superior sensor on your phone to capture all of your memories. And like me, because I've been an advocate for this for a while, is you just got to get good at taking rear camera selfies. You would want to use the best possible sensor.
It's actually not bad. If you think about it, it's actually quite reflective. Like you could see right there. Here you are. Juan in the feet.
It's actually not quite as easy. The phone that shocked me, the image sensor on the OnePlus 8 Pro is now so large that I can see my silhouette in the camera lens for when I'm lining up a rear selfie. And I actually did this live on the podcast where like, oh, sure. So take one. And I you flip it out, you take the photo, you push the volume rocker, you pull it back, and you're perfectly framed. Once you get a feel for it, it's so easy. And the Sony's pretty close. I mean, once you kind of line up on that Sony T-stop logo and the reflective of the glass back panel, you don't want to take photos with a gimped little selfie camera ever again, because these rear sensors are so much larger.
And they're not just that. I mean, they're the focusing level that we have on them. The fact is, even when they refer to them, this is the level of detail that the engineers put in there. They don't talk about them in the sense of what they're talking about. Basically a 16, 24, and a 7mm. Those are the equivalent. So you understand the type of lenses you're working with.
Oh yeah.
The face detection, the autofocusing, the OIS, everything. All of those things are put together and like carefully tailored together. So I feel like that's where it took it a little bit further for me than what LG did with theirs. Even though LG has I think that their microphone game is definitely very much, I would say, more superior in the sense of what we see here with Sony. Although I do have to say the audio, the wind filter, I guess, that's actually really good on the Sony. Like I was in the videos that I've done, even though there was like really bad exposure, it was just a very harsh lit environment. There was just no way for the camera to expose me correctly and exactly at the same time expose the background. Was just too bright. The microphones did amazingly well, but I still feel like LG does a much better job with microphone configuration, especially with the different audio modes that we have in there. And then with Sony, it's like different options need to be function different. Like you can't use external audio in the native camera app. You have to jump into Cinema Pro. And, those are the little things to me that I feel like should be, those are the things you want to use. Those are the things that really should just drive you to basically do more, do better. And of course, forcing you to use that shutter button. Oh yeah,
it definitely feels generational because the Sony Xperia camera app. Actually, and let me see if I can show you this. It might go into weird portrait mode. Yeah, it's going to stay in portrait. Sorry, but I'm not going to stay in here for too long because the Photo Pro app replaces their manual app. If you remember, Xperia's used to have a really gnarly, it was a pretty gimped manual control. Like you could kind of adjust ISO through menus. Like you'd have to go in through the settings to try and make all of your adjustments. So this is what you would see. You would go in, let me adjust my, exposure settings, and then I can go back. And that's gone now. So then you tap on Photo Pro and it takes you to this. It really seems like Sony is feature by feature, sort of devaluing their auto mode camera app. But I want
Yeah.
to go back into one more thing here because I feel like this is not going to get enough attention. Like on any other phone, when you shoot photos and videos, they all just go into the same bucket. You've got your DCIM folder, and pretty much everything goes there. I mean, if you have like a Pixel, we'll put your raw files in a different folder. And
I was going to say, yeah, that depends on the, yeah, some of them do like to actually change it around, but you're right. For the most part, everything just goes into the DCIM and maybe subfolders in the DCIM, but essentially in the same folder.
And so again, we're on a Sony, and Sony engineers aren't really looking at Android. They don't care about Android. They care about making an alpha that fits in your pocket. So everything here is project based. So you have different settings, you have different modes, you create a new project, and we sit here, and I'm just going to call it the date, sure, whatever. And I want this project to be, you know, a 23.98, 23997, whatever we're going to call that. And I want my color to be sort of a strong, you know, this strong look right here. And then when I start shooting in this mode, I'm just going to get one clip so that we can see it. Whenever I move back and forth between different projects, all of those settings are retained, and all of the clips that I've shot stay in their own individual folders. So again,
and it locks
clips,
your it locks the video resolution and the frame rate for that project.
Oh, yeah. So, but that's, I mean, again, I feel like that's a very important distinction between what Sony's trying to accomplish here. This is a camera with a filmmaker's approach to content creation. This is not a camera with a YouTube approach to content creation.
Which, speaking of which, this is the old one. So here's on the right side, you see the original Cinema Pro, and then you see Juan's new on the Mach 2. If we're gonna geek out, let's just geek out. Mach 1, Mach 2, go.
Yeah, but I mean, like they actually brought a few things to the Mark 1 that kind of helped get this close, but everything's just been lightly refined coming into the Mark 2.
I like the new menu though. The new focusing, the new menu option just looks a little bit sleeker. The screen seems a little bit bigger as opposed to having, you know, you see here on the on the original Xperia 1, they're a little bit wider, taking some more space. Like the viewfinder is not as wide on the Mach 2. Definitely they've learned and they moved it closer to the right. You don't need that much to see, you know, the word look in there with the, like, you know, all the options that you have in there, but we still have Venice, everything's still in there.
Well, and then also that what I really like is just having that little exposure slider in the bottom left corner.
Yeah, sitting right there, exactly. It tells you exactly how the exposure's done.
Again, you know, like not having some kind of histogram or some other type of capture is disconcerting when I'm on another phone.
They do have the histogram on the Camera Pro, which I really like. That you can turn that on. Yep, that's where you want it.
Real quick, I noticed, and I kind of missed some super chats. LeBaron popped right back in. I had you guys playing on the Google Home in the background. TK, DM me on Twitter. I got you covered, dude. You want to try some of this popcorn? I'm saying it's legit.
I'm sensing a new addiction. Okay. Well, hey, dude, I'm glad Ramadan's over. I can eat at any time now.
Do it. I've got my buddy Shaka Armstrong. He's my producer.
Shaka
used to put us on TV. Both TK and I did live TV spots on.
I ran into him at CES, walking around, mouth handful, eating, trying to walk and eat at the same time, and then all I hear is T'Chaka's like, TK. I'm like, what? Oh my god, hey man.
So Shaka is also doing his own smartphone and gadget reviews on.
I've seen a few. Yeah.
I'm so sorry. It's reviews.org. Is that the outlet? Shaka, please drop a comment or drop a link in the live chat, because you've been doing some phenomenal work on smartphone reviews too. So and I'm sorry, I'm exhausted and I've already spaced what the full outlet website is, but Shaka's good people and you should be also following his stuff too. And then we've got a question here from Kevin. What do you think about the Xperia 1 2, since people are bad mouthing it when they have obsolete design, low megapixel camera, et cetera, et cetera? I'm going to jump in on this first, because I actually had exactly this kind of conversation about the camera. And it's super frustrating when people who don't know about cameras are confident in their ignorance. The image sensor on the Xperia is pretty much the same image sensor that's the main shooter for a Galaxy. It's a
Mhm.
larger 12 megapixel sensor. So it's the same size as the 64 megapixel sensor on the V60, but you've got much larger photo sites. So it's kind of like the difference between a Panasonic GH5 versus a GH5S. There's a
Yeah.
reason why the lower megapixel GH is more expensive in a standalone camera, and that's exactly what Sony's doing here.
They're focusing on giving you better pictures with the 12, and I mean we've seen it even with Google too over the years. They've stuck to the 12 megapixel sensor and given us the basically more of a software approach to it. But at the end of the day, these are not your standard, your typical 12 megapixel sensors, and they're not going to be providing you just what you think of. Because if you're assuming that the sensor or the quality of the image is based on the number that's associated with the megapixel that comes with it. This is where we make a mistake. We don't understand that there's so many components that go into producing a good image. The image sensor, the image sensor itself, and the amount of if you're using a 48 megapixel sensor, but you're pixel binning it down to 12 megapixel, you're pretty much kind of doing the same job. You're trying to use a large sensor, combining pixels, and trying to basically cram that into a smaller image so that you can get a better image as opposed to shooting a true 48 megapixel shot. So at the end of the day, you really have to appreciate what you're getting there. And Sony's fine-tuned all three of these 12 megapixel sensors to do one specific thing and to do it very well. And the reality of the matter is that you just need to be understanding that it's just not going to be as powerful in the default camera application. This is why now we have a dedicated cinema, which we've always had, but the upgraded version of the Cinema Pro, and we also now have a dedicated Camera Pro as opposed to a Pro version or a Pro mode inside of it, the camera app that we had before. It's essentially as the best way to say it, it's literally an alpha camera in a smartphone. That's the best way to describe it.
Well,
and it just happened to have
they're
a
genuinely
4K display.
trying to match. Yeah, they're genuinely trying to match the focus. So
Yeah.
you've got that not only face detection but also eyeball detection autofocus, just like Sony brought with alpha cameras. They're also trying to match the color science. And again, this is a very important distinction where so many people out there that are trying to be content creators on Sony cameras, you have a workflow that's going to move I'm almost as seamlessly as possible from phone to standalone camera. It is not inconceivable that someone would want to mix this footage, and it's going to line up in their workflow. It's going to line up in their color grading. It's going to line up in their editing very similarly to their standalone nicer cameras. This is a perk of having these teams working more closely together under the Sony umbrella. But again, that puts it outside of a average consumer kind of conversation. To me, it's if you can't understand this as a philosophy, one, I would say this is probably not going to be a phone for you anyway. But this is also one of the big challenges is having a company that can market this appropriately, that can get this media out there. Because if consumers don't understand what it is that this phone is bringing to the table, it's going to feel wrong. It's going to be really unfamiliar for someone who's just going to pick this phone up out of the blue. Well, first of all, so few people are going to have an opportunity to just try one of these. It's going to be really hard to get your hands on one.
I'm hoping, I really, really hope that there will be some type of demo at least a Best Buy somewhere, maybe, because for the most part, it's all online from what I've seen as far as going to be like the pre-order. We know it's already at B&H. So there is maybe a possibility it'll be at the B&H in New York. But again, who's going to fly to New York to try it out? If what are you doing this week? I'm going to go to New York. I want to check out the new Sony. What are you doing?
Sure. The new Sony camera, like that new vlogging camera they just put out. No.
Well, so
the phone.
Speaking of which, actually, one thing I really enjoyed doing with the Mach 2 is I've actually been using it as a front-facing display for my A7 III. it's obviously they realized it's actually the application for it is preloaded on the Mach 2. So when you turn it on, all you want to do is just connect it over, and NFC tag it over, connect and use it. It just looks amazing as a display. Obviously, it's a wider display, just looks great. But they're really trying to optimize it. It's essentially a supplemental piece of hardware that you normally use as a smartphone, but that works really good with your Sony Alpha. It feels natural down to the menu system and the Camera Pro. Clicking the Sony menu and going through the different tabs and the different options you get.
Right.
It's seriously super, super nice.
It's I don't know. The thing is, there's just something so unique about it. First off, it puts out such a bold first impression for being it's the monolith from 2001 A Space Odyssey. Yeah. This phone doesn't look like anything else. And in a market right now where, like, I put out that video saying, hey, Android manufacturers, stop making new phones. Instead, try and keep the same form factors for a couple years and just refresh the internals. I got a lot of pushback on that notion of oh, well, that's how Androids compete, and you've got to have something fresh, and people really care about design. And I disagree. I don't think any consumers really care about design anymore. But you look at this, and it's making a visual statement that's unlike anything else. I was looking at some of my video clips because I'm going through speaker comparisons, and I accidentally edited a video where I had replaced a OnePlus 8 with my TCL 10 Pro. Because like from the angle that I'd shot the video, they looked exactly the same. Like I could not tell which one was which. So I don't have that problem with an Xperia. It's visually very aggressively identifiable.
So one thing I forgot to ask, you kind of touched base on it before, all the images in one bucket and so on. What are your thoughts as far as the whole fact that now they're using Google Photos?
It makes me sad. I really liked the Sony Gallery app. I don't like using Google Photos so here's what I'm doing. If it's a recent photo that I'm trying to page through and I'm trying to find, I open a camera app and I look through the gallery that way.
Okay. Yeah.
But I really don't like the way that Google Photos organizes on-device photos, and that your immediate view is sort of the Google Photos web bucket.
The web bucket, yes. And especially if you have the same account on multiple devices, you're looking at pictures from your other device before you see the device pictures on this one.
Because I keep one main account for all of like my apps and games, and
same here.
As soon as I open that up, I'm seeing photos from a dozen other phones. No one else is going to have that problem. That's a tech reviewer problem, but I still prefer having an album view that's local to the device.
Exactly.
And then if I want to look up, online stuff, I'll open my OneDrive. It's just I understand why a lot of these companies are doing it though. LG, they've been trying to get rid of some of their app bloat. There's no more email app. Even Samsung has kind of whittled back on some of those standalone applications. It's just galleries. Every phone that has their own dedicated gallery, I like that better than Google Photos.
I also feel like, so the way I understood it was essentially it's the support for the playback on the content that we're able to shoot with the Sony. Essentially, they felt like Google Photos was a better tool to use, and they didn't have to worry about updating it. Kind of, it's an app that works with everything that they needed. I feel like there has to be a way for us to default the camera roll just to be the default one on the device, not the backup of every other device. But I feel like we're in a unique situation, right? Because the reality, I don't feel like everybody has,
I feel
three
like
different
no
devices.
one else has. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so it's an issue that you only face, obviously, if you have three phones and you have that one account. Kind of like, I am in the same boat. I have one account that I use for all of my review phones that I log in with that is not going to mess with a standard device, like if something my wife is using. So the answer is, it's something I think we are facing. It's a reviewer problem, but I do feel like maybe a better setting option would have been nice. Would have been much better for us.
And not just a reviewer problem. This is let's talk about privilege in a first world reviewer problem. But
Uh,
but even sort of ignoring that, when I've sort of purposely told a phone not to upload directly to Google Photos, I just don't like that much hand holding. What I'm looking for on the phone is usually very specific, and in my brain, I am personally that kind of person who has an organization idea for how I
mhm.
like my files organized, how I like my music organized, how I like my videos organized. And every single time I've tried, from the original launch of iTunes, trying to organize my music that way, to playing with my photo and video clips today, no company has ever come up with a system that works better than what I keep in my brain to organize this kind of stuff. Okay, so I'm going to try and answer a question here, and I don't think I'll be able to, but Josh Vergara was asking what the audio bit rate on the videos are. And right now I'm getting a pretty compressed, it looks like an AAC at 156 kilobit per second at a 48K sample rate. So it seems like pretty average audio compression for their video files. And it's all locked up in a giant H.265 wrapper. So that's not bad. But I would say it's average. It's good, but it's not like LG's hi-fi audio mode. Oh wow! And I just saw this. Hold on, I gotta fire this guy up right here.
I know. Who is this
in the live chat? What's up, fellas? Miss you guys. I don't trust Sony's camera app experience on their Xperia devices. I'm still excited to put it through the ringer, but as an A7 III user, the user experience isn't worth noting. I love it. I knew I could count on you for throwing some shade. I mean, I shoot on Panasonic, so I'm not one to really be able to call out, what
I shoot
Sony
on
may
both.
or may not be doing
I'm
well.
both Panasonic and Sony, and I like Sony. I love Sony. I think my only gripe about the A7 III is no front facing display. For going to places and shooting B-roll, I love the Sony, and that's the camera I take with me to every show. But if I want to do A-roll footage when I know exactly what's going on without having to use my smartphone, the GH5 I think is my main camera here as well. Oh, I think Josh was asking, by the way, the video bit rate, not the audio bit rate.
You say bit rate, and I'm an audio guy. I'm gonna assume you mean what the audio bit rate is. I'm seeing a 90 megabit per second data rate in an H.265 wrapper, which is ridiculously high quality. By comparison, 8K video on an LG I think tops out around 60.
Oh, wow.
It's about a 50% larger bit rate at 1/4 the resolution of what LG puts into their 8K video. Again, it's if you wanted to try and make an alpha that fit in your pocket.
I think they're getting closer. They're getting very close to.
But also, I feel like we say things like this, and just the normal state of how everyone's schedules get wonky, and then trying to deal with time zones and stuff. But I feel we need to have like some mega reunion live stream, like get Josh, get bored at work, actually staple them down to a time where we can all get together and just like hang out with the beverages of our choice. And have like a good catch up, and maybe not even make it public. I don't know. I think people would want to watch that, but it's been way too long, and I hate that it's we might go another year before we get a chance to see each other again.
Dude, and we're like between you, me, and Josh within like 30 minutes or 35 minutes roughly between each other. It's crazy. It's crazy, and. Yeah, no, it's really like most of the time it's end up basically myself, Juan and I will hang out each other, or I'll go hang out with Josh, or something to that effect. But since I've been home and I haven't even been where my normal day job stuff is usually, where I am, I'm not even as close. I'm a lot further to Josh now that I normally used to be. So I hope at some point or another we'll be having some type of a little get together in the area, just hang out and go kick it. Just to kind of catch up, and like last year I think we had a good time at the Pixel a little get together that they had here, and we're not having anything this year.
Yeah, it's pickings are going to be slim for us to actually see each other face to face in the way that we would normally go and hit a press event or a trade show.
Last year, Josh and I were hanging out in San Francisco. Yeah.
But I mean, just like the whole crew. I mean, you get Warren, get Thunder E, TK, Tekken T. We'd need Sam. Got to get Sam in on this. I feel like there's like a good family reunion that hasn't quite happened yet, and so we just kind of need to kind of like stitch together, some like what we might need to do is make it like a Zoom call and then like screen share the Zoom call to some type of video upload. I think we could. I
can arrange something if we. No, definitely. I even see Josh Quinones in the comments. Hey, Josh, man. Yeah, that Pixel event was really nice.
Oh, and I just shared the comment, but Tech Odyssey, have a good night. Thank you for dropping by. From Brian Allen, just a quick comment here. I got the LG V40 unlocked and plugged in my $35 QVS USB-C to HDMI, and it says second screen connected. So I guess some V40s do have slim port or alt mode. Also, there is no lag or latency on a 55-inch LG TV. Increasingly, like, again, when we're talking about premium features and stuff for grown-ups, if you're spending a lot on a phone, I'm becoming a bigger and bigger advocate for being able to plug that phone into some other kind of display to get your work done. We were talking about this offline, and you said you've started, because you've been messing around with some gaming phones. Yeah, we know that Sony doesn't really include all of the same kind of thermal hardware that we might expect from a top tier gaming phone. What have some of your experiences been on some of the higher performance, the heavier lifting applications that you like to check out? Has the Sony been kind of hanging with some of the other premium options that you've been reviewing?
With the exception of, I think the hardware that we have here so the gaming mode that we have here is actually very nice. The ability of overclocking and setting the right performance gaming experience that you're getting there. I love the fact that they're giving us the ability of being in the video recording, native video recording in there. So I actually pushed it to the point where I was running Game Bench, which is, if you're not familiar with it, it's basically a game monitoring service that you're able to subscribe to, or actually you're able to get access to. So running that on top of screen recording and top of running the processor at the best performance to play, like the different games, Call of Duty, PUBG, Fortnite. Fortnite doesn't really count, but it's just another, it's like racing games, but like, running sessions. Like I ran roughly about almost like a 2.5 hour, almost 3 hour session gaming between one game after another, going in there, trying to set up the video that I'm trying to shoot for, hopefully for tomorrow morning. It was able to hang in there. Other than the fact that the thermals kind of get a little bit warm for me, I felt like, obviously at the top left, closer to where the camera sensors are, which essentially roughly is where the processor and everything is sitting in there. It didn't really bother me too much. I think it was able to hang in there with everything, but it's not designed to have that heat dissipation that it's really heat and Sony phones have never been, I would say, friends. If you've ever used a Sony camera in the past and you've tried using it for an extended amount of time, you probably are very familiar with it's too hot, I'm shutting down now, or it's too hot.
I have to make this. I have to make this all relative, because like I was at Pocket now when the XZ came out, and I want to say that was a Snapdragon 652, which was a dog of a chipset. Sucked so bad. But I did my very first video test on that phone in Gadget Lab 1 years ago. I'm directly under an AC vent. The AC is cranking, and the phone could barely make it through 6 minutes of HD video before it thermal throttled and shut off the camera.
Yep.
I was out shooting in 90-degree California heat, and I eventually got the Xperia, the Mark II, to thermal throttle. It didn't shut off the camera though. It just said
No,
some
it
features
disabled features.
disabled. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was still going. This
Yeah, yeah.
is huge for a Sony. Like,
Absolutely.
if you've seen the way I collect content, if you've seen the way I collect footage for my camera reviews, I'm shooting a lot. I'm shooting very frequently, and I'm
Yeah.
doing bursts of photos that all need to be processed, and then immediately jumping into video to capture samples of video. And then it might be another minute, and I'm doing it all over again with all 3 camera sensors on the phone. So it doesn't seem to handle this as well as an LG. Definitely doesn't handle this as well as a Samsung. This has handled it so much better than what Sony's used to do, even just like 2 years ago.
Yeah, no, it surprised me the first time it came on, but we've had it. So that in reality, though, the last few days and even the next few days are going to be pretty warm for us here in California. So if you're going out to take any kind of pictures, it's going to heat. It's not the phone's fault. It's more so we're just running through a heat wave that is going to last us at least through Friday or Thursday, Friday. So roughly, but yeah, you're right. At least it doesn't shut the device, or it just basically doesn't just stop and say camera app, close the camera app. Nope, you can't play. Come back later when you're cooler. But it's something that I really wish that they would have focused a little bit more on thermals, specifically since like they're trying to focus a lot of the stuff that I saw, at least with the PR stuff that I got a chance to see. They're pushing it as a gaming phone. They're focusing on the gaming experience. It's not like it's a side kind of like, oh, by the way, it happens to play games, kind of thing. No, it's actually a focus. It's cinematography, videography, gaming is a big experience, and of course, content consumption is another. So for me, with the fact that it does get a little bit warm, I've never had a throttling issue in the gaming experience. So that at least I never got a warning. Played it for quite a few times. I even ran some benchmarks that were running for about an hour. Not a problem. So from a gaming standpoint, I think it's a champ, and it's hanging in there with the best of them. I think the overall, the only thing I think we'll probably say at this point is, which pair of headphones do you want to use with it? Because you can enjoy every single one of them with a 0 latency and not have to worry about Bluetooth.
Right.
And as much as I love Bluetooth, and I love the fact that I can play games.
Do you love Bluetooth? TK
loves
Bluetooth.
The functionality that it offers. Honestly, one of my favorite things to do.
Convenience, but I love quality. So.
Yes, and I am all for quality, and that's why I always have both pairs. But at the end of it, so one of the main things that I like doing, especially when, with the working at home or even in the office, I like to start a song or music, listening to a playlist. I put my phone down on my desk. And if I have to step away to go do something, I don't want to have to worry about picking up my phone. Now, keep in mind, though, that if I'm doing things for an extended amount of time away from my desk, I am going to bring my phone with me. But there is a case scenario for me, at least, where I feel like Bluetooth does a job fine, where I don't need to basically see what I'm doing.
I'm mostly poking fun. I just circle back real quick, because you were talking about gaming, and I feel like both Sony and LG are making this a bit stronger of an argument in their PR events. So when they're talking to tech reviewers, they're making this point. I'd really like them to be making a bigger deal out of having headphone jacks back. Gamers care about having some features like that. 0 latency audio is a big deal, and Bluetooth can't get us there.
No. Even with the best of them, you can't.
I just feel like this would be the right time for Sony to make a little noise in this weird market that we're in. We just got, Samsung's quarterlies just showed, I think, almost a 20% drop in phone sales. If you're not out there making a case for your products and appealing to consumers, then you don't really exist. You're not really going to be relevant in this market, regardless if you make an amazing phone or not. One thing I did want to just circle back to very, very briefly too, when you were talking about gaming, is I do feel like this might be one of my potential concerns or cons for my full review, is how much effort that they have put in the media side, on the reviewer side, talking about cinematography, filmmaking style cinematography. Like, you're talking about a robust kind of workflow and gaming, heavy lifting, really trying to use this as a pocket supercomputer. But Sony is still, I would say, just below average in handling heat, performance, battery drain. Those two philosophies kind of butt up against each other when you're coming off of a phone like a Galaxy S20 Plus, a OnePlus 8 Pro, or like the battery monster on a V50. It kind of resets your expectations for what a premium tier content creation device should be able to handle for running those cameras hard.
It's definitely a it's hard to I think it's a different department that doesn't really work next to it, right? You got the creative department, and then you got the battery the I think that's like the overall horsepower and how do we get it to stay last longer. I mean, I appreciate the fact that the battery is bigger, but the fact of the matter is we went just to a 4,000, which was kind of like the standard of last year if we looked at them from overall, right? So last year was the year of around the 4,000. This year's the year. It's the top 5 complaints. Yeah, that's a video that Josh is going to be putting out as soon as he gets his device.
I'm sure. Again, he's got his top 5 concerns, and I'll do my top 1 complaint.
No, I think there. Look, I think the things that you like, and if there is any concerns or any issues with the Xperia, I think it's going to end up being down to the point of a taste, personal taste. I think my biggest concern that I've had from Xperia. So for me, I weird enough, I got the Xperia 1 literally like about a week before I got the Xperia 1 Mark II. It's the fact that I wanted to be able to play games with zero latency. Even at its best, Bluetooth is not really a good gaming companion. It may be okay. It's great for watching movies. It got a lot better with movies because it's getting very close. But when you're playing games, specifically games that are beat driven, like there are certain games that are there's nothing like a pair of headphones. And to their credit, they include a pair of headphones in the box. They have a headphone jack, but they also include a pair of headphones in the box to get you going right out of the box. So to me, when I saw that, I was like, that makes sense. So I think from a gaming standpoint, you probably will enjoy it. You're not probably, you will enjoy gaming on a device like this. I don't think there's a problem. I think the longevity of how long you're going to be able to get to play is going to be concerning a little bit because of the fact you are going to be basically just pushing this device at, again, maximum brightness, full processing power, but again, using 2019 standard. So
yeah,
it doesn't stop me from enjoying it, but I feel like if there's anything I can actually maybe point to, that would probably be my little thing there. But at the end of the day, with the amount of games that I've been playing on it within the last 3 or 4 days, I can't complain. I really can't mess with it. It's a solid performer, solid gaming device, great cameras, and native video recording that actually includes you in the picture. That to me was fantastic. It's a very unique little touch, but they use the front-facing 8-megapixel camera for actually what it does best, including yourself in the game.
Without having to do that weird like hoop jumping of pulling up Google Play games, live streaming. Like it never really worked. I used to try and run a few streams that way, and it was always super flaky.
It's good,
but
it's a good experience.
I mean, I think that's one of the critical things. We did a stream together where we were kind of geeking out about the iPhone SE. That phone is very easy, I feel, to explain. If you can sum it up for a lot of consumers very, very simply. V60 is a bit more complicated just because I think it's so modular. The phone itself is one thing, then the dual screen case is something else, and having active pen support makes it a no competitor. But you have these different sort of audience groups that the phone could appeal to.
Exactly.
We also know LG marketing isn't going to put out a television commercial that's really going to highlight those differences. I feel like the Sony is going to be an even bigger uphill battle this year of properly identifying and communicating who this phone is for, especially in North America. If Sony isn't out there leading a big chunk of this conversation, and I mean, look at just our experiences embargo day and being some of the only English speaking reviewers to put out an embargo video on that Sunday. And then literally the day after, my YouTube feed blew up with Sony's vlogging camera. So we know Sony can put some oomph behind products to try and get people talking about Sony experiences. I wish we had seen 7% less Sony vlogging camera shifted over to Sony $1,200 phone. Would have been nice.
I feel like it's probably was because it was run by multiple teams. I don't think it's the same team.
Totally. Sony's a huge organization.
Exactly.
I'm just saying,
we gotta understand. Yeah, it's a big, it's right hand, left hand concept kind of scenario going on.
But again, it's about a company having that kind of faith in their products. It speaks to, Sony keeps saying, hey man, we're in the smartphone game. We're not leaving the smartphone game. We're going to use PlayStation and Alpha to subsidize the losses of our smartphone department. And I feel it's fair to ask, well, why? Why are you in the smartphone game? If it's to make, sort of compatible products with PlayStation and with the Sony Alpha team, that's great. But that both the Sony Alpha team and the PlayStation team would benefit from that conversation of ecosystem, which just isn't there. If it's to contribute to Android AOSP, you don't need to make phones to do that. If it's Sony services,
exactly.
If it's Sony services, well, your services are on every other platform and are all pretty much Android compatible. I mean, I keep boiling this down. And for as much as I love Sony design, I have been so impressed with this phone. There are so many features on this phone I'd love to see in other forms, like on LG devices for camera controls, camera layout, software. I'm so excited to have an expensive phone with a headphone jack back. I'm still I feel like I'm gonna struggle getting into the end period. After I've been with this phone for a week and I'm starting to write my full review, man, I mean, like, there's a clear shot for filmmakers. I think gamers might like it, but there are going to be gaming phones that I think might do this job better.
The competition is steep when it comes to gaming specific phones, exactly, with the same processor and roughly the same amount of RAM and maybe even higher refresh rate for gamers. But no, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So, but that's just exactly it. I mean, like, as soon as you start bringing up one thing like that, I feel like there's a very slippery slope. There's a rabbit hole that you have to jump down. And for me, like, I keep coming back to filmmakers, like literally like narrative story driven content. The phone I would want would be a Sony. But again, you also have that conversation like, well, maybe I wouldn't really shoot this on a phone. I'd probably shoot it on a standalone camera. And then I look at my V60 and there's so much content that I'm shooting from my V60 right now. So, like, I should back off. Like, I'm not gonna shoot the Sony in the foot and just say, well, get a real camera if you want to make movies. But I'm struggling. Like, there's that little bit of a hitch or just a little bit of a stumble where I want to really, I mean, like, at $1,200, I really feel like I need to be able to point to or to nail who this phone is going to be a good fit for, without talking someone out of it if they were considering it, but just to say, like, this is a very specific experience, which is very unlike anything else on the market today. And that's very, very good in some ways and can also be a little concerning in other ways. And my telling you that still might not properly address some of those concerns. Like, it still might not properly prepare you for what the experience of using this Xperia is like.
It's a tough. It really needs to be. It's almost like an example would be is the RX-7 100 a camera for everybody? Is the new vlogging camera going to be for everybody? At the end of the day, it's a camera that's dedicated. I mean, for me, I'm a big fan of the RX-7 100. I love those cameras ever since the beginning, and I lived through the whole 4K overheating problem that they went through. And the Mach 7 for me it's a godsend. It has a microphone headphone jack. Finally, I mean, an input, a line and input that you could use a standard microphone system with, that you no longer have to rely on the built-in audio. So for me, I feel like it is pretty much really geared to a prosumer smartphone content creation type of a person. To be able to justify the $1,200 price point. I mean, design wise, it looks great. It definitely has the appeal of a unique smartphone in 2020. Obviously, we have Carl Zeiss lenses there. I mean, you could see the little touches that they're putting in there. I mean, to throw in the Zeiss name on a
Hmm.
phone, it's
Some
pretty
big
much
claims.
just like, yeah, it's like, look at me, I can take great pictures, and I have that granular level of, like you pick up Zeiss lenses for your cameras, for your DSLR or your SLRs, and that's when you associate the name Zeiss. I mean, they didn't even have that on the first Xperia one, so um, it's a prosumer content creation type of a creator. It's hard to sell it to somebody, at least at the 1,200. I think if the price once the price kind of normalizes at some point, because I think we had the same roughly the last year with the Xperia One. It
I
started at
don't
1,000, and I think now it's like 695,
Well, but
roughly.
that's just it. I feel like Sony kind of looks at Apple's distribution there because
Mhm.
there were only a handful of sales on the Xperia One. We never saw a hard, consistent price drop until the Mark II was closer to
Yeah,
launching. When we
in
were
in the beginning,
really
once we
cycling it
started
over.
hearing Mach 2, you could see the like, whoop,
So
and
I don't not like LG prices plummet. Like you can go pick up a V60 on Verizon of all carriers for 550 right now. When I look at that, like man, $550 for a V60 or $1,200 for a Sony. This comparison gets really brutal when we start
it
looking at
is
some
it
of
is
those
very,
differences. And I don't
when
think
the
the Sony's
price.
going to drop a lot. If anything, I think what we might see, and again, I don't have any inside info on this, and I don't think it's likely, but what we might see is, once this promo where you buy the Xperia and you get the XM3 earbuds, once
Mhm.
that ends, maybe we see a price cut to $1,100. But I don't think Sony is ever going to devalue the Sony label or the Sony
No.
brand. They
and
they
and
feel like they deserve to be in the conversation right up alongside iPhone 11 Pros. And if an iPhone 11 Pro Max at 256 gigabytes of storage is a $1,250 phone, then there's no reason why an Xperia 1 Mark II with 256 gigabytes of storage shouldn't also be around a $1,200 phone.
and I think it's going to reflect. That's probably going to end up basically reflecting in the sales that people will start looking at. The concern though is that Apple has the eyesight, which a lot of people are looking to buy a device at that price point.
Mm-hmm.
But the person that's looking for an iPhone is probably not going to say, "Oh, by the way, I just saw a Sony." You know what I mean? It's a person that likes Sony, and that they're basically going to be looking at to what new Sony devices are coming out. I think the Xperia 5 last year was a great option to have, especially after the Xperia 1 came out. Smaller little baby version of the Xperia 1, the 1080p panel. You got a lot of the nice
Mm-hmm.
little tricks with the camera kind of thing, better fingerprint sensor, stuff like that. Um, I feel like, I think they're making a statement. The reality of the matter is, I think this is their flagship for 2020, right? This is the best of the best that they're going to offer when it comes to a smartphone. I'm not really trying to compare the Mach 2 to the Pro too much, because I feel like it's two different markets. I think the Pro is really designed more for monitoring, streaming, that type of sector of production style of work. Where the Mach 2 is kind of like like I said, I keep using the word prosumer because I feel like that's generally where the it's not the regular average shooter. They just want a point and shoot kind of camera. They want to point and shoot, but still have a few of the features that the pro level cameras have. The 4K 60, the control, the different color temperatures, the control down to the granular level outside of just a pro mode in a camera app. Um, and I feel like that's going to be the consumer that this will appeal to. This is the person that will say, "I think $1,200 makes sense for me." An RX-7 100, being sold for 1,000 actually makes sense to me. I wouldn't, if
Yeah.
it came out less than that, I would be like, "What feature did they take out?" You know what I mean? You kind of They've trained
What
me, I
how'd they
guess.
gimp my camera? Why didn't
Yeah,
they
no,
just
no.
give
What
me a
did you take
perfect
out? What was
camera?
the feature that you thought was not important for you to bring down the price on whatever version of the Mach 7? And so for me, I've come to appreciate Sony's standards to a certain point. Like, if they're going to release something, and they're demanding $1,000 for the camera. And year over year, the RX 7100 has always consistently improved every single year. Mind you, forever to get the headphone audio input over headphones, but that's just, again, me picking. I feel like if you even remotely like the Xperia One in 2019, you're going to love the Xperia One Mach 2. That's the evolutionary path that I feel like they're going.
Everything is better.
Everything.
Everything is better. It's so hard.
Down,
I feel
down to the feel in the hand, and I will say that now. It feels much better. No. I had to put that in. Where are you, Aditya? No, just from the edges, the way they flatten the edges on the device. I feel like the grip
makes it more like a camera.
It's exactly. It just feels like when you're holding it, there's no chance of your fingers slipping from one end to the other.
I showed this on the podcast. I'm going to do it again. It was actually one of my little minor pet peeves on the Mark 1.
While you're doing that, I'm going to power button Goku just for everybody.
Team Goku. So there, yeah, do it. There was a separate power button right below the fingerprint sensor, and so you couldn't use most mounts because there was just nowhere to put the phone that wouldn't interact with some buttons. Especially but now on the Mark II, you've got a perfect. It is perfectly clear on this jobby in between the shutter button and the power button and fingerprint sensor lines up perfect. I mean, it's almost like Sony engineers looked at how to line all of this up on your sort of nicer smartphone mounts. And I still love this. There is nothing on the bottom edge of the phone. There are no other buttons here because you wouldn't have buttons on the bottom of a camera. That's just not where you put buttons. So this is a camera that also happens to be a high resolution screen smartphone for watching movies on. It's a very different take on what a premium phone should be.
Absolutely. I feel like the combination of the fingerprint sensor and the power button, I think, which is for me one thing I just did not understand, because you had the volume rocker, the power button, and the fingerprint sensor all in one line. And I think
it was still the remnants of that weird licensing issue that burned the XZ1. I think they've now finally sorted that out. It only took them 4 years to finally fix that for her product, but it's here.
But that's the thing. It's consistently getting better. Year over year, Sony delivers, and that's one of the reasons. I mean, it's one of the reasons why I was so excited about getting a chance to play around with it. And it's just, like I said, if you even remotely like the Xperia 5, even remotely like the Xperia 1, you're gonna love
everything
the Xperia.
Is better here.
Yeah, it just so much.
To that question, even though I think they're devaluing it, this is a question from Grant S. Thank you so much for the super chat, Grant. I very much appreciate it. This sounds like a lot of focus on the camera pro mode. Would you say auto mode results aren't much improved or closer to other point and shoot focused phone cameras? Everything has gotten better, but again, I have to highlight a Sony Xperia camera is so unlike any other phone camera. And you have to go into using a Sony camera with the expectation that Sony engineers made a camera app that knows better than you do. So this auto mode is like, you get in the way if you try to change anything in what the auto mode is trying to accomplish. On the originals, on the Sony XZ, I was taking a photo out in a field, and I was trying to focus on something right in front of me, and the camera kept focusing off on these trees way out in the distance, because I guess the phone thought that would make for a better photo than what I, as a poor meatbag human slob, was trying to take a photo of. That experience does not feel like a Pixel. It does not feel like an iPhone. It does not feel like a Samsung. It doesn't feel like an LG. It feels wholly alien to how other phones take photos. That being said, what the Mark II actually does improve upon just the sensor size improvement, this larger image sensor, already extends a significant advantage over the Mark One.
Yeah.
So I do not personally enjoy using the Xperia camera app. I think I've gotten a pretty good feel for it. You know, kind of like you start building an expectation of what the photo is going to look like before you hit the shutter button. I kind of get it. But immediately using this new Photo Pro app and staying in program mode, I am getting way better shots. So
Absolutely. No, yeah.
this auto mode, the hard split is going to be the fun features like bokeh, like having fake bokeh, and your portrait mode, and then also your slow motion. So, you know, that slow motion burst, that doesn't happen in the Cinema Pro. That has to happen in the Xperia app. And I'm missing one other fun feature.
The AR stuff, the AR, all of that
The
AR
AR.
fun stuff they add in there, all of that stays in the and
That's the
historic.
only
It's
reason I'm going to the Xperia camera app. Everything else I'm doing in the Photo Pro app, even when I'm shooting in a mostly auto style. So you can go program mode and just lightly tweak the exposure. So I go program mode and I automatically drop it 1/3 under. So you underexpose by 1/3 of a stop. And I'm happy. I'm good. That's my full auto. I don't need to go to the Xperia app, and I like the results better. But you know, you want to fire up the shutter speed or the full manual, you can dig deeper. But I wouldn't say that the software has actually gotten much better. If
a
anything, what
little
I'm
bit.
seeing is that they're pulling pieces out of the Xperia app to go into the Photo Pro app and to go into the Cinema Pro app, and then just the fun stuff, the bokeh mode, some of the advanced HDR modes. There's no point shooting video unless you just want 16:9 UHD, because you can't do anything in the Xperia camera app for video. And
No.
panoramas. That was another one I forgot about.
Panoramas are still there. Creative effect, portrait selfie, obviously, because they're using the front-facing. Google Lens integration and slow motion is in there. But there's also like they have that. They actually keep the Pro mode as the Pro version of the camera app. If you're in the camera app and you hit the More menu, you get the Pro mode in there. And if you're in the video app and you hit the mode menu, it still only takes you to the Pro mode, Pro Photo. It doesn't take you to the other one. The other little thing that actually I enjoyed a lot about this is the ability of actually jumping to wide right away without having to go from standard telephoto to wide. I never liked that order of you had to go between.
I hate when you have to cycle it.
Yeah, and on the Xperia one, for some reason, it was basically one button, one little circular option in here. You had to go to telephoto to this, to the main, zoomed in, and then you get the wide angle lens. If you're trying to take a shot with the camera app at the time, it was always driving me crazy. But just a few little things, different settings in there. They're all still sitting at the top. For the most part, it looks exactly the same. With the exception now that there's no Pro Photo, it just takes you straight into the Photo Pro app, and you can customize it so that if your phone is locked, like right now, you guys can see the phone is locked. There's the lock screen. I can press and hold the camera shutter button, and that will take me. Oh, it doesn't actually unlock the phone. That's interesting. Let's do it one more time here. I thought this will translate quite well. Let's unlock
TK, you're tanking the whole stream now.
Yeah. So here, if we jump back into the main screen and I press and hold the camera shutter button, I can have it specifically take me into the Pro Camera app right away.
I'd recommend people do that.
Camera. So always love the little options that they have in there.
I always forget on a Sony that when you go into the Xperia camera app, you can't even tap to focus if you're shooting video. Like the phone is full auto. So some of the things actually have gotten a little better. I would say that because of this image sensor size increase, that we see some nice improvements to things like the low light, the night modes. It's not you don't get a dedicated night mode like on LG and the Pixel and the you don't get that on the iPhone. But there is a sort of a longer exposure dark night mode image processing. It's actually pretty good. That low light mode is pretty nice if you're in that full auto. Even for there though, I just genuinely prefer shooting my auto shots right out of that Photo Pro camera app. It's just so much more photography focused. And I know it's not point and shoot kind of click shutter button HDR juicy pop wow, but it's a camera. It feels like a camera. You use the shutter button like a camera.
Focus and then full press to
I'm
take the shot. Yep, exactly.
I'm good. That's where I want to be. I like that a lot better.
It's a lot of good stuff.
It really is. We've had a ton of conversation here. Like I said, I feel like we start hitting some of our kind of burnout as we get around to
No,
around
yeah,
2
no, for
hours
sure. And
of
to answer
conversing.
Aditya's question, yes, I am streaming off my Concept D. My Acer Concept D is it's the center of my entire little beast of a whatever hodgepodge combination things I have going on here.
And this is a question, and I don't mean to pick on this question, but this is one of the, I feel, is going to be one of the difficulties in talking about a phone like an LG, talking about a phone like this Mark II. Amit is asking, can the Sony Xperia 1 Mark II compete with an iPhone? And to me, it's not a question of better or worse. Sony has a number of advantages. If you care about a more photographic look to your photos or a more cinematic look to your videos, then the Sony wins for having a larger image sensor. Just like on standalone cameras, that bigger sensor helps us achieve a shallower depth of field. If that's what you care about, then I would say you absolutely need to be shopping Galaxy S20s, LG V60s, OnePlus 8 Pros, and
Actually, yeah.
Sony Xperias. The OnePlus 8 Pro camera sensor is phenomenal. Just some of OnePlus's camera software gets in the way of what is one of the best camera sensors on any phone out on the market today. But again, if for sure,
hands down.
Even then, I want the OnePlus 8 camera sensor with LG's camera app, but with Sony's camera app layout.
That is a marriage that will never happen, my friend. Even if we were able to port the camera app over, the libraries alone would the development alone would be years. By the time it's done, you were like, that sensor's too old. Move on.
I just like we were talking about Juan's unicorn device, but to wrap up, there's no way to easily answer a question like that, because if I were looking at people, someone who wanted a Lexus but only cared about a tap the shutter button kind of camera experience, then I would say you want to shop an iPhone 11 Pro. I do not feel that I push just the shutter button and I get the juicy HDR extended dynamic range photos that upload instantly to Instagram. I don't think the Sony's the phone for you. But if you take any consideration or any composition, or you're looking at what you're trying to achieve in photography, man, I can't do it on an iPhone. I can't do it on an iPhone. Like, I have instantly fallen into using the Mark II. I shared, it's this one goofy photo of a thistle just after sunset, or like right at sunset, here in Southern California. And it's one of the first photos I took from the Photo Pro app. And, something just clicks when you've been using cameras your whole life. I've shot on Canon. I now shoot on Panasonic. I shot on Samsung NX series cameras.
Oh, yeah, I remember. Yeah, you still had those.
I gave up on those, man. That made me so sad that Samsung abandoned me. But also I've had a little experience. I shot last Christmas all on Sony Alpha and an A7 III. Like, talk about having baller holiday photos, right? Lex unwrapping gifts shot on a full frame Sony was really nice. When you get a feel for photography like that, then you want a camera app to match that kind of an experience on your phone. I don't necessarily value the auto HDR, the one button shutter experience on a Pixel on an iPhone. I want something that's going to be a little bit more thoughtful, that I have to plan my content out. So it's never to say I can't answer that question, but I kind of can't answer a comparison question just as a toss up, LG or Sony. You have to at least give us what is it that you're trying to do? What do you like? And then we can kind of dig into the nooks and crannies to try and figure out what's gonna work better.
Very, very eloquently put together. Yes, no, that's exactly what it is. It's what's right for you. It isn't always what's right for everybody, and it's a line that it's hard to draw, because if you're in the market for one or the other and you are brand new to the market, then you really need to start with a different device to kind of feel what you want to learn out of it, because they may end up being, I mean, don't get me wrong, an iPhone with the menu system is that is just very different than what you normally have on Android. And it's just, yeah, no, I think Sony has a very specific customer in mind. And when they sent out the engineers and they said, look, I want you to transform this phone into an alpha.
Yeah, they did that.
That's what they did. They wanted literally, I mean, they should have literally called it the Sony Alpha. I don't know why they didn't just go with the Sony Xperia, 1 Mach 2. Just go with the Sony, Xperia Alpha. I think that's a better on the dot, and everybody would understand exactly what it is. Oh, it's an Alpha. Okay, that makes sense.
Oh, for sure. Or at least some play on, you've got your Sony Alpha A7.
Yeah,
this could
yeah,
be like
exactly.
The Sony Xperia B7, or just something, like to kind of play with that. A couple questions here I do want to just fly through from Adrian Troff. What is Sony's update schedule like for Android updates? They've been very good
lately. Yes, at least with I mean, let me double check.
Android 10 is on the XZ2. It didn't go to the XZ1, but my XZ1 did get a pretty recent security patch. I know that a security update just went out for the Xperia 5, so I think they're on at least April, if not May. But again, I feel like Sony was one of the first to make the jump when we were going from Android 8 to Android 9. I think a Sony was like the second or third phone to get that update, like right around Pixels.
April 1st on the Xperia one.
So we're on the April security patch for the Mark 1. They've been consistently solid, and my XZ1 compact got security. I think it still might be getting security patches. I'd have to pull it out and check, but months ago it was still getting updates. So I don't have too many concerns about Sony software support. They've been really consistent there. Sorry, I had another one that I wanted to jump on too, but did you see one in there that?
No, I was just looking at like a DTA. It's like, what do you guys think of the time of flight sensor, the ITOF? I think it helps with the autofocusing, the speed autofocusing options that they're looking here with the 20 frames and up to 60 per. Basically, the autofocusing system on this is so much like an alpha that is just crazy, especially if you take photography of any kind of moving subject, aka kids, animals, anything that just keeps moving, never wants to stand still. This is the camera you want to be able to use. So I think the introduction with it of it here is definitely well worth it, and it helps a lot, especially in all of those moving shots and focusing shots that you want to be able to take in. So it's really, really nice.
Yeah, I've tried to take a few photos of like the bokeh mode or the portrait mode. I forget what they're calling it, and they're fine.
Portrait selfie.
Yeah, I mean they're good. But I mean like no, using not the selfie mode.
Oh,
you're actually using the rear camera. Like holding up the rear camera and doing kind of the software bokeh. Because it's using the main sensor, it's a lot like the same issues you have with LG's portrait mode, where it's a little too wide to use that as a portrait. But the subject detection, the software background blur, they're pretty good. It's still a fake software effect, and it kind of shows.
Yeah,
but
it's
these
not really
larger sensors. Oh yeah, it doesn't fool the eye at all.
I was going to say it's easy to see. Yeah.
But these larger sensors, I find like they don't really need it anymore. Once you get over to this 1/1.7 inch sensor, even when you're at kind of like arm's length away from the phone, they are producing a natural depth of field fall off that looks pretty good. I mean,
Yeah.
we're starting to get into territory of like being at the same distance from a micro four thirds camera shooting at around f5.6, f8. I'm being a little generous to the phones, but it's a very similar effect where my subject is standing out from the background as long as I've
Yeah.
got a little distance on the background. And for a phone, that's good enough. Like that's decent enough for me to create something that's a bit more photographic. It gets a little bit better still when you shoot on a OnePlus 8 Pro, but I just wish the OnePlus 8 Pro had this kind of camera software.
They'll get there. I think at some point we'll get there. I feel like it's an iterative process, and year over year they get better as far as their image processing. But I'm very happy with what they've done as a recipe for the 8 Pro this year. I feel like they did a really good job with tying off a lot of things that people have wanted, and also still keeping the device, fast, just crazy fast. It's just absolutely. I love what they've done. And I see what Sony's trying to do. Like I said, they've tried appealing to different things. The combination that we have here, the recipe they decided to go with, at least for the U.S. market, is it's an easy sell for for a person that loves the creativity part of it. It's a little bit harder sell, especially with the fact of the granular level. It's just the average, not when I say average, I mean the user that just wants the point and shoot concept, kind of I just want to be able to hit one button and it spits out a great image kind of thing. It's hard. It's really meant for a person that's literally holding an A7 III on one side, and then basically the Xperia 1 Mach 2 on the other one. And you could see in the name, Mach 2. Like, who buys it? It's like, I want to buy a Mach. Which one do you have? I have the Xperia 1 Mach 2. Which one is yours? Mach 1. Go for it.
Boom.
Exactly.
Bam.
Go forth and prosper, my friend.
Bam.
At Juan Carlos. Somebody was asking about the audio quality. I think that one is really well explained in the audio deep dive that Juan put out not that long, right before the video.
I did promise, as we're kind of closing out this video. So first of all, I just have to, my personal bias is all phones should have headphone jacks, regardless of even whether or not they're audiophile grade. But this is the reason why I kind of wanted to save audio as the big surprise, is because of something that TK and I kind of figured out together, which is really exciting from a content creator standpoint. The headphone jack on the Xperia is not LG grade. So we don't have something in here that's going to unseat a Sony Walkman. So if you have one of their digital audio players, a standalone media device, we're not in that tier. The V60 headphone jack to headphone jack, no issues unseating what Sony has put into the Mark II. I mean, it's pretty dramatic, the differences between the two. But if you've got some decent earbuds and you're working with lower impedance cans, I think it sounds good. I mean, I think it's practical, it's convenient, it's accessible. You don't have to mess with the dongle anymore. I had the Xperia 5. I have no idea where my dongle is for the Xperia 5.
Long lost.
It's gone. Yeah, I mean, like, I'm pretty sure you open the box and you take the phone out of the box and you pick up the dongle and then it evaporates, kind of, Marvel Cinema Universe style Thanos snap. It just turns into dust into your fingerprint, in your fingertips. But one of the things that's, again, we're looking at a phone designed by a Sony camera team. You need a microphone input, and this is such a huge advantage over where we were with the Mark 1, is having something that doesn't block the USB port for an analog input. So if you got a 3.5 millimeter jack, not everything. My Comica mics didn't work, but my Samsung mics did. And then also headset mics work. So you can plug a headset into a headset style input into the Mark II, and you can record audio directly off of that in the Cinema Pro app. But then TK figured out that USB audio input is working in the Cinema Pro app. So it's not going to work in the Xperia, the kind of point and shoot Xperia camera app, but in Cinema Pro, you can plug a direct audio input. So is that what you were using to pop in?
This is it's a Comica speaking USB-C style.
Yeah, my Comica 3.5 millimeters don't work, and they're like, those are my favorite wireless labs.
Yeah, no, it works. I when I first got this, I was like, which device do I want to try? And of course, the Xperia dropped in my hand. I was a little bit concerned initially because I tried the native app and it didn't work at all. And then as I was in the middle of, I jumped over to Cinema Pro and I was setting up a project, and I'm like, wait a minute, let me try this. And sure enough, it worked. And that to me was like, wow, okay, now we're talking about, they're thinking of everything. They're focusing on every single aspect that you want, and they're giving you all the options: audio input on the headphones and the USB-C, and of course, just everything that you want, realistically from a production standpoint, and projects-based style work. You really have to think of it as, when you're working with the Cinema Pro, as a project. Don't think of it as, I'm just going to take one clip. It's a project level. And something that they also changed here from last year is that regardless of what project you're working in, your images or your videos get dropped straight into Google Photos. I don't know if you've noticed that, Juan. You no longer have to actually, it's not sitting in the project and you have to take it out later. It automatically gets dropped into your camera app, the photo gallery app for Google's photo app. So for me, it works great. I love the fact that it works with both wired and USB-C. Because to me, that just helps me, when I can set up my shot, set the phone on a tripod and step away now, and I can actually still be the subject, allow the device, to just do the work that it needs to be, and just get really good footage and good audio. But although the microphones on it are actually very nice.
Yeah, the microphones are pretty decent, but I had to go one step further. So, as opposed to just like some type of little USB microphone, the first thing I tried, and I was shocked to find that it worked in every way that it's supposed to work on a PC, was I connected my Olympus LS100 handy recorder to the Xperia 1 Mark II. And
right there.
so you can have stereo microphones just like from the top of, it's a lot like a Zoom.
I tested it out with my Zoom H5. So it's absolutely the same. As long as you're able to connect it, it'll work. And
so
XLR.
you want a USB audio interface with XLR connectors connected directly over the USB port for digital I/O. Then you can do that. That's huge. We've never had that in a stock Android camera app before. The only way we've been able to kind of pull it off on most phones is to use something like Open Camera. This was one of the last, I feel, advantages of the iPhone, was having direct USB audio I/O for the camera app. And now Sony is joining this in a really big way, where this would be a professional application of that. And then what cracked me up is this also showed up as mass storage. So like the audio files that were on this popped up in my file explorer, and for both the built-in storage and the memory card, it worked just like an audio interface would work connecting it to a PC.
That's nice.
It was awesome. So I do want to share this. So people have been asking, not the person who was like demanding that we look into the cameras here, be more polite. Say please if you want us to do stuff for you. But there's like some controversy as to the camera resolution and the camera sensor, and it's similar. It sounds really similar to what OnePlus did, where OnePlus said that the OnePlus 7 Pro had a 3 times zoom, optical zoom. And then people wigged out, well, it's really a 12 megapixel sensor that's been cropped. But that's accurate. If you say it's 3 times optical zoom at 8 megapixels, that is exactly what the OnePlus 7 Pro delivered. And so here we've got 12 megapixel main sensor, 12 megapixel zoom, and 12 megapixel ultra wide. What the phone is reporting is that the zoom sensor has a 14 megapixel telephoto sensor, and that is cropped to give you a 12 megapixel image at 3 times zoom. Some other people are saying that it's actually a 20 megapixel sensor. What the phone is actually showing me in device info, in the hardware info, is it reports as a resolution of 14 megapixels, and then that's cut down to kind of give you that last little bit of reach. I still need to do more shooting on it. I've spent more time just kind of digging through the UI and trying to catch up on some of the audio tech and the microphone tech and the audio hardware. But that definitely will be covered when I'm getting ready to share my camera deep dive.
Exactly. I see the 14 megapixel. Yeah, 13.8.
And again, that's what the phone's reporting. Sony could very well be taking a 20 megapixel sensor, but again, the firmware of the camera is only going to report to Android what it's capable of delivering or what it's capable of seeing. At this point, I feel like something like that is kind of a non-issue. I'm really not bothered if Sony decides to take a 20 megapixel sensor and center crop to give us a 12 megapixel image. You don't want the 20 megapixel image at 2 times optical zoom. On the OnePlus 7 Pro, from 1.1 times zoom to 2.9 times zoom, the main sensor is better than the telephoto sensor. And even at 3 times zoom, I kind of wish I could just shoot and crop from the main sensor rather than using this gimped little tiny telephoto sensor.
Kind of like a Samsung.
Exactly. So what Samsung does is you have 2 sensors at the exact same focal length. The 12 megapixel and the 64 megapixel sensors are 2 degrees different in field of view. They are the same. This hybrid zoom, there is no hybrid. It does not exist. All of that is cropping from that 64 megapixel sensor to get you your telephoto experience. That's here, this would actually be a real hybrid zoom, I suppose, if we're kind of cropping off the sensor, but it's an optical crop. It's not like you took a 12 megapixel image and then you zoomed into that and you cut away information. That is the relationship between the center of the sensor, the lens that they're using, and the resolution that they're putting out. So I'm fine with that. I really don't have an issue with that. And telephoto isn't something that I use a ton of, but even from some of my early results, it's plenty competitive against any of the other options that we have to play with. The OnePluses, the LGs, super crop. We're all kind of in the same ballpark. It's going to be fine in that 3 to 5 times zoom range, and it's probably going to look like a comic book panel or an oil painting when you go all the way out to 10 times zoom.
Yeah, exactly. All the colors bleed into each other at that point. Yeah, no, it's
and
okay.
You get that kind of like software recreated edges because you're just obliterating the center sharpness of this lens. Like,
yeah,
you're not really going to get results that you want pushing a smartphone camera to its maximum zoom.
No, I think the focal lengths that we have here, I think are really good in the sense of the wide angle lens is really functional. I like the standard focal length. The telephoto, I feel like I prefer doing more zooming in with my feet than it is to zoom in with a telephoto. I feel like you'd get better pictures anyways. And if you want to get really close and up close with macros, flip on the wide angle lens and then get close with that. You're still able to get much better pictures than just
sure.
Yeah, there's a lot of flexibility here. There's no question that you can still get great images, but again, you just need to understand how to get those. Which app you need to jump in to get that control and to enjoy, to get to hone in the actual setting to the level that you want. The standard app is okay, but the Camera Pro is where it's at for me. For still photography, obviously, I think that's where you want to be literally, and that's why I reprogrammed the camera button, because out of the box it was automatically taking me to the camera application. No, I just want to go straight into the Camera Pro. I don't, skip the pass go, collect the 20 and go straight.
Completely agree. And again, you're talking about you're talking about macro modes and getting a little closer to your subject. It's a nice little perk from Xperia 1 Mark 1 to Mark 2 was getting autofocus on the ultra wide.
Yeah, autofocus face detection. Yep. Nope. To me, it was like when I started looking at wow. They took care, so they did really take care of very well the wide and the standard focal length. For both of them, they gave them all of the features: OIS, autofocusing, face detection, everything. I feel like the telephoto is the only one that they decided not to go OIS, but that's okay with me. I don't need OIS to zoom in. I prefer it on the standard focal length.
Well, and then also when you use zoom off of smaller sensors, or when you're doing crop zoom, a little less so, but it's really only hardware you're gonna want to use in very good light.
It is.
It's kind of like lower cost telephoto lenses for standalone cameras.
Mhm.
You usually have compromises with, the focal length versus the aperture. You need a lot of glass if you want a wider aperture, but then you kind of don't want to shoot that shallow a depth of field. Issues with handshake being magnified at that longer
Well,
focal length.
you would need OIS at the bare minimum.
Oh, for sure.
OIS and EIS just to even get any kind of stable shot. When you crop it in that close, any slight movement in your hand gets multiplied by the time it hits the image. So yeah, no, and we've seen it with Huawei. Huawei does a really interesting job with when they're using their periscope lens. They have to stabilize it, otherwise it makes no sense for somebody like. It literally feels like you're moving your hand all over, although you're actually in your mind you're holding it very still. So it begs a tripod at that point. But I feel like
just I mean, to kind of sort of put a pin in this zoom comparison. Aditya is asking, if the sensor is capable of 20 megapixels, could an update allow the sensor to use all 20 megapixels of it? Will using that 20 megapixel give us better details? So let's assume we used the whole sensor and that the lens is really covering the whole sensor. Then what you would arrive at is something probably closer to like a 1.9 times zoom off of the main sensor. You wouldn't have 3 times zoom, because the 3 times zoom is achieved by using less of the sensor. So it looks like you're zooming in. It's kind of the difference between a full frame camera and an APS-C camera. We talk about crop factor. That's you're literally cropping the lens. You're using less of the lens to achieve a longer reach, a longer equivalent focal length. I don't think you would like the look of those photos compared to a light zoom from the main sensor, which this phone does really well. When you go into the Photo Pro app, you can zoom on the main sensor, you can zoom on the ultra wide, and you can zoom on the telephoto, and they're all distinct. It does not try to blur the lines and make it feel like it's one super zoom lens.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you select your lens, and then you say, well, I want to zoom in a little. It keeps you on that lens. It doesn't let you switch. It doesn't switch you automatically to another lens. So it's like you have 3 different lenses, because you do, on a standalone camera. I really don't think Sony's going to open this up, because the advantages would be having a slightly wider field of view. But if you want a wider field of view, the main sensor is going to be noticeably better. It's going to be significantly better for that medium range in between the main sensor and the telephoto. So exactly. Again, I mean, I'm not bothered if this is a 14 megapixel image sensor, if this is a 20 megapixel image sensor. That's not what I really feel is germane here. It is a 12 megapixel image sensor at 3 times optical zoom. And that is accurate. That seems to be correct. And I don't see any blowing up of images or recreating a resolution that doesn't exist. That is an accurate and truthful statement from Sony as to what it is that they're trying to deliver here.
I like that last one. My mom doesn't know I'm awake watching this.
That's adorable.
We made it.
All right, so let's really start wrapping this up. I have the audio review out. Speaker comparisons. I've got some speaker back and forth between the Xperia, the LG, and something else. But a pretty decent deep dive, just trying to talk about some of the philosophy. Stereo speakers. There's a rear, the bottom speaker is front firing as opposed to bottom firing. That is the correct way to point speakers at your face. And then also the charts and graphs. So you can see the granular differences on audio performance. where I even kind of put it up against some other phones too, like the OnePluses, the TCL 10, and obviously the LG V60 had to be a part of that conversation in there too. But it's that's like the first foray into making more deep dive commentary. I've just started shooting, so some of these questions are also going to be informed by me walking around my neighborhood and trying to shoot as much off of this camera as we can. TK, is it that we're going to try and focus on gaming and that kind of heavy lifting performance on your channel first? Is that where you're going to take your Mark II?
So my initial, I felt like since you were focusing more on the audio, I felt like that wasn't even something I would even. My goal was always to augment my content with what you do, as opposed to try to redo what you do, if that makes kind of sense. My goal essentially is that if I'm going into a review and if I'm going into a video and you've done a great deep dive into it about audio and performance and speakers, I feel like I'd rather spend more time on something I'm more tuned to playing with or doing with, playing games. Say, how does this actually compare to other gaming phones I've been playing with for the last, month or 3 months or so. And I felt like, when it comes down to the audio performance, for me, I will touch on what's important. And I feel like if there is a need for a deep dive, point to you. That's the main thing for me. I don't feel like I need to recreate the wheel when you've spent hours and hours of doing so. So always point to you if I need if that's where it goes. And then as soon as I'm done with the gaming experience on my end, based on the fact that I have a somewhat of a limited time left with the Mach 2,
we're both under the.
Yeah, I think a lot of people assume that I'm keeping the device and it's mine. It's a loaner. It's a temporary loaner. It's not something it's a nice little time to hang out kind of a thing. So I'll be basically building a somewhat of a database of B-roll on my end, just to kind of make sure that I have all the aspects that I need. But the main thing that I want to focus on after that is basically just shooting in like the first 10 things to do, how to get the experience, how to set up the Xperia 1 Mark II to enjoy it, to set the expectations for somebody that's thinking about getting it, what needs to go into, what do you need to understand, between the white balance, the creator mode, what is creator mode, what is the standard mode, why is there different options in here, and the audio inputs, those little bits and pieces without going too much into detail. So but that'll be probably later on in the week. And then with the B-roll, I'll be figuring out some other content while I wait for my pre-order to come in, because that'll be some time. So yeah, that's at least the focus that I'm going to shoot for.
With both of us kind of limited early previews on reviewer devices that don't feel quite retail ready, I'm going to be pointing to a lot of your content. I kind of feel like, for us unofficially being, partners in crime on phone reviewers, but just being buddies, like I kind of feel like we're going to have to tag team this one to get the content out the way that we want to get it out.
To get the coverage. And I was actually very pleasantly surprised on it was literally just the two of us. It's like there was nobody else. 5:30 in the afternoon. I mean, I was late, and I
was reading through my PR emails. Like, did I get the date wrong? Did I jump the embargo? Why isn't anyone else?
Well, I saw 5:30. So for me, for some reason, 5:30 resonated. That's why I kept asking. But I knew it was Sunday afternoon. But then I still was like I was having so many weird problems with Premiere. It just drove me crazy. I had to re-render, and then as I rendered and I posted a video, I realized I skipped the clip. The clip with the eye auto focusing on the cat was not. Oh my god! I have to redo the whole thing. So yeah.
But it was like us in North America, and then all
everybody
of
was.
Japan.
Yeah, no. So early on Sunday, if you just typed in Sony Xperia 1 Mark II, you would have found a whole bunch of Japanese content creators putting out videos, and all in Japanese. So, and I was like, okay, did I? Okay, now I'm thinking the embargo was early, and I misunderstood AM for PM kind of.
Did they send me the wrong time zone? What's going on? And thankfully, everything was fine. But again, fine. because these are short term, I'm going to be pointing to your videos a lot, trying to talk
Yeah,
about gaming and stuff. I think
same.
after I collect my camera samples, I'm going to circle back and try and get a good video editing, looking at content creation performance, like soup to nuts. What is it like making something entirely off of this phone? Because that's the biggest argument for it. And I'm already foreseeing where there could be a couple small challenges for someone who's completely a solo
Mhm.
producer.
It
If you
it
work in a team, if you have someone behind the camera and in front of the camera, this phone is amazing. Already like the
absolutely.
content I'm shooting of like Lex and Marie is like, oh, I can do this and this looks really cinematic and I can come in close and I can rack focus from my daughter to my wife sitting at the dinner table. This is amazing. I could be doing dialogue back and forth between them, focusing, and not having to have like a whole cinematography team to do it. Trying to do that all by myself is proving to be just a little bit more difficult.
It's a lot more. Yeah, that's why I said it's the creator. It's the creator, not the it's the
Yeah.
behind the camera creator.
So plenty to talk about. I'm going to be joining you on your Saturday
Yes.
broadcast because
So
in addition to this, with so many other phones that are going on right now, tomorrow I'm going to be getting an LG Stylo. Why not talk about a $150 phone while I'm swamped with a bunch of other devices too? I feel like it's a good time to do kind of a beginning of summer wrap up.
it's actually
Like this is
good. Yeah.
sort of not quite exactly the first half, but pretty close. The first half of 2020, it's been a weird year, and so many devices I think scored well and reviewed really well, but consumers are being very conservative with what they're buying. I think it's a good time to just stop for a second and just look back at everything we've gotten up to this point and kind of
Yeah.
do some conversations on that. So I'm going to be really excited to join you for that on Saturday. Coming up.
Saturday morning with tech on roughly 10:30 or 10 to 10:30 a.m. Pacific Standard. Well, it's the same time every week. The guys know. Aditya is always there, and everybody's hanging out with us there, definitely. And Gary always jumps in. So it'll be kind of yeah, like an early, like a summer roundup, because I feel like most of the summer devices, actually, for the most part, I think we've already out. We haven't. There isn't much of devices other than maybe the OnePlus X that we haven't heard much about.
Yeah.
I think that's probably, maybe if anything, a good budget device. But we'll, yeah, definitely join us, guys, Saturday morning for another live stream. But it'll be good. At least we would have had about a week or so with the device at that point.
Yeah, I
Not
mean,
just
we'll still follow up some Sony stuff. We'll be able
yeah,
to follow up with a bit more experience on each of our sort of criteria, well, our
yeah,
expertise, if you will. But
absolutely.
wrapping up this live stream, Gary the Fireman, thank you so much for that closing us out with the super chat. You guys are awesome. That is all. Gary, you're awesome,
You're awesome,
and
man. Every time.
just the call to action, the call for this community, for the people that are watching our streams that participate in our content. Oh, Aditya, what are you doing, buddy? Y'all rock. Thank you for this live stream. Thank you, Aditya. Very
Man,
appreciated. Very well appreciated. But what goes for TK's community and what's always gone for my community, we are living in extraordinary circumstances.
yes.
Consumers, our family, our friends, our coworkers, maybe our casual acquaintances are leaning on gadgets more than ever before. And what I have consistently been impressed by in both of our communities, what I have been so proud to be a part of, is watching my online friends really rise to this occasion, to be good tech neighbors, to be good tech citizens, to be those resources as people are trying to figure out things like, how do we do a video conference call? How do we stream this content? How do we get educational materials to kids? And you all have consistently been there. I've seen you in comments. I've seen you in conversations. I follow you on Twitter. You guys are making us look good. At a time where there's not a lot of confidence in tech geeks, right? People don't listen to us on these big topics like they probably should. you probably aren't getting the kudos you deserve. So from TK and I think we would both go in on this together to say thank you. Thank you for being good tech
Always
neighbors
appreciate it.
and good tech citizens.
I say that every time, and I mean it every single time. And I applaud everybody in the live stream, hanging out with us, showing up every time, putting in, commenting, talking, engaging us, even on the live stream on Amazon, man. Thank you very much to everybody. Thank you very much.
For sure.
Always.
So, you know where you can find us. TK, I'm going to leave a link to TK's channel in case you don't know, but you probably should. And then also on Twitter, TKDSL8655.
Got it.
Did I get it?
Yes.
Good. Okay. And of course, I'm some gadget guy
at some point, but yeah.
It's the 8655 that throws me, because it's like, is it 856? No, TKDSL 8655. Got it. But give him a follow on Twitter if you haven't been. You should be. You probably are. And then of course, I'm some gadget guy all across the Twitters and the Instagrams. I'm not on the Facebooks. I'm technically on the Facebooks, but I'm not really on the Facebooks. And folks, I'm going to catch you all on a future live stream. Lots of videos coming to this channel, but definitely put it in your calendar. Saturday morning on TK's channel, we're going to follow up this conversation some more. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you so much for subscribing. And we will both catch you back on a future broadcast. Take care. Be well. Stay safe.
See you guys.